All right, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming to October's caucus meeting. We have a pretty aggressive agenda on tap for you this on top for this evening. So we're going to go ahead and get started with just a couple of announcements. The first announcement certainly is congratulations to our principals. October is Principal Month, so thank you to Mr. Hamilton, Mrs. Walsman, Mr. Funk, Mr. Page, Mr. Black, and to Mr. Ward for all that you do for our school district. Enjoy some free candy. That's located at your table setting. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Funk and to Leah, who's going to talk a little bit about a high school initiative here at the beginning. Mr. Funk?
Thank you. So then all through last year, we were looking at ways to increase student involvement, looking at connectivity across grade levels, and just to make students connected to the school. The research has shows more success in high school. So we did several activities last year. And then the student council, led by Leah, started approaching me and hounding me all through the end of the last school year about this great event they learned at the conference that other students had put together in other districts called a Mr. Minithon. Well, initially I was like, there is no way I am entertaining a Mr. Minithon contest. And so, but as you can imagine, Leah is very persistent. And we kept meeting and refining our overall concepts and the criteria. And before you know it, over the summer, the student council and Leah had a program to roll out that really would focus on connecting students to the school, increasing student, participation, while still raising money for a good cause and promoting some good Black Hawk spirit. So I'm going to turn this over to Leah, and she's going to walk you through the Mr. Minithon, which is our first year. We're starting small, but we see this growing. Go ahead, Leah.
All right, so before I get into talking about Mr. Minithon, I just want to clarify what Minithon is. So throughout the year, we fundraise and we collect money, and it all goes towards the Four Diamonds Fund. The Four Diamonds Fund raises money for kids with pediatric cancer. The money pays for things like their therapies. So there's different kinds like art therapy and music therapy. Some of it also goes to the medical bills. So it's a full 8-hour day. It's at school. And the phrase that day is, "We stand for those who can't." So we stand all day. There's no sitting. We do activities and games. There's bounce houses. It's a lot of fun. But the main idea for the day is to raise money and awareness for children with pediatric cancer. So when I and the other student council members saw this idea, we thought it would be a really great way to not only build connections outside of the school, but within the school and between grade levels. So it's a friendly competition between not only senior boys, but also the grade levels, because they each have a team. It's a little bit of a competition between the clubs, and we're hoping it'll increase connections between students all across grade levels and across all the different clubs. So the main reason we're doing this is to raise money for the Four Diamonds Fund, but we also want to increase school spirit. So what is Mr. Minithon? It's a competition between 4 to 6 high school senior boys. Depending on the year, we can have more or less. So this year we have 7 boys. We originally started with 10, but only 7 completed the application. And these boys are picked to represent the 4 pillars of Minithon. These 4 pillars are honesty, strength, courage, and wisdom. So each of the boys has a committee. The committee consists of a senior girl, a junior, a sophomore, and a freshman. The junior, sophomore, and freshman can be a boy or a girl. We're not picky on that, but we do want to have another senior girl because we don't have a Mrs. Minithon yet. I'm hoping maybe one day we'll have both, but we're starting small this year. So we encourage the teams to be diverse. So what does that mean? We're hoping that the clubs and the teams will be from different different parts of the school. So if we have a boy who's in football and does football all year round, we're hoping that his committee will be people from art club and music and maybe another sport. An example of why is because we make the boys can. And if you don't know what canning is, they walk around with a can that says for the kids and they ask for money, and all the money goes directly to the Four Diamonds Fund. So if we ask one of the boys to can at a football game but he plays football, obviously he can't can at his own football game. So the committee members can represent them. So if you have a team full of football boys, they obviously can't can at a football game. So we encourage the teams to consist of at least one student from each grade level and multiple different clubs. And these clubs and these students will represent the Mr. Minithon contestant. So studies have shown that developing a connection to school through peers or teachers greatly increases the student's success through their high school career. We're trying to create cross-grade levels, or friendships across the grade levels, and to form teams and friendships outside the normal societal groups. We want to help involve the underclassmen as much as we can. We're seeing some decline in underclassmen involvement. I know most of the clubs I'm in, it's all seniors and juniors. We really don't have any sophomores or freshmen being involved, or even like involving themselves in the pep rallies. So we really want to try and encourage them to step out of their comfort zone a little, get involved with clubs, and be a little bit more school spirited. So one of the things we do is canning. That's a picture of Andrew Baumgartner at the Gold Out game a couple weeks ago. The Gold Out game was a game for pediatric cancer, and Andrew made a little over $200 that night. So canning is one of the many ways you can earn points. So for every $5 Andrew raised, he got 1 point. Some other ways you can earn points is creating fundraising opportunities. We're going to have a big talent show at the end of the year, which is going to be a large amount of points. And then you can also volunteer and have some school spirit ideas, which will also give you points. I have a whole chart and spreadsheet. One of the activities we're doing right now is I'm having all the teams decorate a can for canning. So they'll all have their own individual can, and they'll get points for decorating that, but whoever has the best can will get 20 extra bonus points. And we want to also have little challenges and events throughout the year and during the pep rallies that represent the 4 pillars to also help them earn points. But the part I like most about Mr. Minithon is a lot of this is self-led. They can do as little or as much as they want. So some of the boys, like Andrew, has canned at almost every sporting event he's been to, and himself has made over $500. But some of the other boys haven't canned. Canning isn't their thing, which is okay. So they're helping out in other ways and earning points in different ways. So that's probably my favorite part about Mr. Minithon is each of them can raise money and help out in their own way. It doesn't have to be one way. So I talked to Andrew. I'm on his team, and I was asking him how Mr. Minithon so far this early has helped to make connections. And he said, definitely meeting a lot of new people and reconnecting with old ones. Just today I talked with a couple of former seniors, also getting to know people better in the school from being on my team. And then I talked to Emma Eicher, who is on Austin Chris's Minithon team, and she says, I feel like I've gotten to know my team and other kids in the school better. I definitely want to strive to make friends with the underclassmen as much as my senior class and continue to raise money to help the kids. So I think hearing this from the students is really exciting because they're really excited about it, and hopefully them being excited will get the underclassmen and other students just as involved. So this is one of the projects I had the boys do to kind of get the Mr. Minithon thing started because it's our first year. I had them all make a bio. So here I have Drew Gibney's, Derek Gibney's, Austin Chris, and Andrew Baumgartner's. I also have Kamar Lewis, Nolan Moore, and Bryce McKee, but I couldn't fit their bio on here. So I had them write their names, who they are, who's on their team member, what clubs they do, and why they want to be Mr. Minithon. And I thought this was a great way to introduce who they are and why they want to be Mr. Minithon. In the upcoming weeks, we're going to post them on the Instagram. So if you want to follow the Student Council Instagram, you can do that. We're going to have a lot of things about Mr. Minithon and other events. But yeah, that's Mr. Minithon. I hope it goes really well this year. I hope it increases school spirit and we raise a lot of money for Minithon. I think this is going to be one of the best years. So, does anyone have any questions about Mr. Minithon?
That's great. Have you seen CV's Man Show that they do for a thon?
Yes, actually, CV was at the Student Council Leadership Summit that we went to, and they were one of the ones that kind of had this idea. So, they do a man pageant. Other schools do Mr. Minithon. Some schools do Mr. and so actually, first we did present the man pageant to Mr. Funk, and he did not like that idea. So then we turned it into Mr. Minithon. Well, I did fit in the talent show / pageant in there, but we're gonna make it related to the 4 pillars. Don't worry, it'll be good. It'll be great.
So is Mr. Minithon then just determined by the total, like the highest point getter?
Yes.
Okay.
So we didn't want it to be a popularity contest. So it's going to be determined all by points. You can earn points in a lot of different ways. And we are going to have the talent show / pageant be a lot of points. So if someone's a little bit behind, they could win, or that way it's a little bit more of a competition. But yeah, it's all about the points. But if someone asks you to can, you can give money to them, or you can choose to give it to another Mr. Minithon person. So there is a little bit of competition like that, but it really is all up to the points.
How much does the money contributed, how much does that play into the points?
So when they're canning and raising money from fundraisers, every $5 they earn is 1 point. But for them doing the bios, for example, it was 15 points for them to just do it, but Andrew turned his in first, so he got 20 points.
Okay.
I'm thinking for the cans and decorating the cans, it'll be 20 points, and then whoever wins will get 30. So everyone kind of has a little bit of participation points, but where we're really going to see the difference is how much money they raise and how much effort they put into it. Because if they don't put any effort into decorating their can, they're not going to get first place. They're not going to get those extra points. So it's really up to them how many points they earn.
My concern with that is that you hear instances where somebody's parent just buys it for them, writes out a big check, and that's why I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good concern, actually, which is why we are more focusing on them creating the fundraisers and them canning at games. So if Austin Chris brought in a check for $100, we probably wouldn't accept that, because he didn't do anything really to get it. But I know Andrew, he's on my team. He cans the whole first half of the football game. Like, he's not in the student section. I don't know where he is. He's out canning. Sometimes he even goes to the visitor student section and goes to complete strangers and asks for money. And then with the fundraiser, they really have to create it. They have to put thought behind it. They have to plan it out. They have to ask. If they're doing one of those restaurant nights, they have to talk to the manager. They really have to put in the work. And unless their parent goes and buys $100, $200 worth of food, there's really no way they can buy into that.
But on the other hand, it's all FTK, it's all for the kids. So if a parent wants to buy their kid's way, it all goes to curing pediatric
Yeah,
cancer.
so some of the fundraisers we do are student council / minithon, so it'll go towards the bounce house or the activities, but the canning and the stuff from the Mr. Minithon contestants goes straight to a Minithon fund. It's completely different. It goes towards the 4 diamonds. So the $500 Andrew has raised, student council doesn't touch that. It goes into a separate account. So, yeah, so.
Just real quick, explain again about, you said about the talent show could be worth a whole lot of points that somebody might be able to catch up. Is there danger in the fact that somebody could do nothing and then go out and win a talent show and?
So we haven't decided how many points it's worth yet. I think if it's close, we make it a lot of points, but I get what you're saying.
No, and when we had a couple discussions where it's going to be worth a lot of points, but it's not going to be enough if no one does anything all year long. They would bump them up just because they win the talent show to win the whole thing.
We have to wait and see to determine how many points it's going to be. We have to look at how many points everyone has earned so far.
Just another quick question. Your talent show, is it going to be, how are you going to win that? Is that going to be voted on?
So
Like,
we
does
were-
that go back to your popularity contest thing?
Yeah, so we were actually talking about that. So we're gonna have 3 different categories, kind of, and there's gonna be an overall category. And I'm hoping that we can get the 4 different categories to represent the 4 pillars. And I'm hoping when people vote, they don't do it as a popularity contest, and they really do it to who represents what the best. I think we're gonna try and figure out a way to do that better, but I'm really hoping that if we center it more around the 4 pillars, honesty, strength, courage, and wisdom, then the students won't really have a choice to make it a popularity contest.
That was a lot about Andrew, but I will say, boy, he's super committed to this.
He's really going for it.
He stalks me as soon as I come through that gate into the stadium. He is on me like a leech. You know,
He's about 80 points ahead of everyone just from.
he doesn't hesitate to say it too. He literally, oh, that's the rich fry. Let's get money from him. I'm like, leave me alone. What are you talking about? No. But every time he's the first one to come right up to you, you know, with that can. So he's really is.
And Dr. Fox might have given him more money if he didn't refer to him as Mr. Fortelka. Then
That's a negative 30 points. Nothing against Mr. Fortelka at all, if he's listening. But
It did happen.
I have a shorter name. Leah, I think you should be commended for, as Mr. Funk said, your persistence. But I think it's persistence in leadership. It's your persistence and drive to bringing together students, but more importantly, right, bringing together students on the awareness of what the Four Diamonds Fund does for our local communities and what it does to serve students who are going through some of the roughest times in their families to overcome such barriers. And you know, it's exciting that such good can come from, you know, be able to help, you know, at the end and not losing sight of that, but having fun while raising awareness and raising funds to support something that does such great good. So keep leading. You're doing a phenomenal job. We're proud of you, and it's awesome that you know that you're so committed to our school and to our district and to the Four Diamonds, and you're certainly a champion for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All right, thanks. Now we're going to dive into the agenda and talk about resignation, leaves, and transfers. I know, what a decline, right, after that. So, woo, I didn't do that one very
Actually,
well.
before we do that, I think,
Yep.
you know, since you were mistaken as Mr. Fortelka, I remember the first time Mr. Lehman and I, when we first hired you, were giving you a tour of the facilities, and a first grader thought you were Barack Obama. So
I was much thinner then.
you must just have one of those faces. And also, I think we should honor Leanne Singley for spending her 60th birthday at caucus.
Let's give her a round of applause. Happy birthday.
thank you. No place I would rather be.
And we all should have wore boots.
And we did bring you some treats around your table as well. Looking at the agenda for resignations, leaves, and transfers at this time under personnel, we have 2 employment offerings that we're super excited about. Allison Lang's coming to us from just down the road in Mechanicsburg. She's from Mechanicsburg. She's going to be our new data and instruction specialist as Mrs. Ann Borlinghouse unfortunately is transferring to her local school district. But Allison comes with a plethora of experience, having her reading specialist, math coaching endorsement, and several years experience both at the elementary and middle levels. So we're excited to get her on board once her school district releases her. And we have Alana Mazur, who started learning, kind of hit the ground running and learning, and she's definitely eager and excited to learn all aspects of school districts and to learn all aspects when it comes to human resources as well. We have some change of status. We have Myron Churowski moving across the collective bargaining agreement scale. Christine Miller going from Chris Miller from substitute to long-term substitute. And I'd just like to give a shout out to Chris Miller. She continues to help us, continues to serve our school district, and has done a phenomenal job. Sarah Miller and Rebecca Moran, change in status and movement there. And excited to welcome back Gail Murray. Gail's going to come and substitute for us as well, spend some time, hopefully in all buildings, and in particular, we definitely need at the elementary school, as our two other high school and middle school principals stare at me madly here. Athletic coaches and volunteers, we're continuing to fill this out once we get all finalized information. Eighth grade coach, Mr. Adam Timchak, girls basketball head coach, Blaine Leonard, wrestling middle school head coach, Corey Fleischer, and for volunteers, for the girls basketball, Desiree Prinz, boys basketball, Mr. Britcher as a volunteer, girls basketball, particularly elementary school, Mr. Urick, Jason Urick, and wrestling at the elementary school, Mike Dobb. And we're also like to recommend Jennifer Cromley to be Aurora bus driver with all credentials there as well. That kind of touts out registration, leaves, transfers, and employment at this time. I'm going to now turn it over. Oh, nope, I'm going to stay with me and go over agenda items before we turn it over for a review of our finances. So looking at agenda for October, we again are looking at treasurer's reports, and you'll see two treasurer's reports on there, August's as well as September's, because we did get our finalized bank statements, so they'll be posted on here as well. Some payment of orders, as well as looking for an approval for Big Brothers and Big Sisters stipends for Katie Bell, Sarah Predrick, and Tammy Coulter. And that's going to be paid through the PCCD Mental Health Grant. And these three have done an incredible job of linking together. They'll review all the paperwork, coordinate schedules, work with our principals and school counselors to make sure that our Big Brothers, Big Sisters program here continues to run and operate smoothly. We have a nursing contract, so we're super happy that Mrs. Boaz has agreed to come on as a nurse health consultant for us in our school district, as she'll continue to provide oversight for our elementary school, middle school, and high school nursing programs, providing all that information that's necessary for the SHARS report, and just making sure, again, that she provides that ongoing guidance and support at about 2 days per week through an independent contract that, again, will be paid through the PCCD grant. We have our first reading of Policy 204, attendance, and we have a second reading of Policy 006, which is meetings, and two discipline committee recommendations, 12 and 13, informational reports, as well as an informational item, which is our sick bank report. Any question on agenda items? Hearing none, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Holmes for a review of our finances. Mr. Holmes?
Thank you. Good evening. You have two sets of financial data in front of you. The first, the single sheet, is the revenue. As of 9/30/2023, our revenue is at $5,107,000, which represents approximately 14.92% of our estimated revenues for the year. And the other stapled sheet is our expenditures through 9/30/2023. And right now, our expenditures stand at $5,057,109, or about 14.74% of our estimated expenditures for the year. On a good note, we have been able to invest some of the monies that we have available to us, and the rates are outstanding. We were just able to secure 5.94% for a 240-day term. So that's outstanding, and that's going to help us financially.
Were you able to dig in, like we had talked last month about some of these, I don't have it with me, but some of these items where we had spent well over 100% already, and you remember what I'm talking about?
I do. And so those are due to what I'll call misclassifications in the previous budget. I wasn't involved in putting that budget together and the thought process behind where certain items went and the amounts in them. So the expenditures that we're expending, we are classifying them true to where they belong. And so you're going to see that unfortunately throughout the year. The point I would emphasize is that we will not be spending more than the budgeted expenditures that you approved.
Hopefully it's not going to be difficult, but hopefully you're tracking that, because for the last 4 years, 5 years, that has happened where we've ended up in a similar situation, and they're saying, we are told that it's because things were classified incorrectly or things were classified differently, but nobody could remember how it was classified before, why. There was no tracking of that. So I'm hoping that we can start literally for the first time in 5 years to make sure we're classifying things, I don't want to say correctly, because it sounds like there must be options.
No, I think there are. You know, when you look at the charts of accounts, and there certainly is different categories, and I think the key, you know, will be keeping Mr. Holmes for the long term will be the key, because as we move and making sure we have consistency, so he'll know exactly where those categories are, where that item fits in the description of the charts of accounts.
Well,
I think will be really important.
My only thing is if he isn't here, that somebody can look back on some document somewhere and see how these things have been reclassified or classified, where they are or why. Because the reality of it is this is the quagmire we get stuck with every year, and it's getting harder and harder to balance a budget when we don't know why things are a certain place. And I'm not questioning integrity or anything. I just wish it were recorded and documented as we're aware of it, in case we do have somebody else come in, or so we know.
I do have the document that explains those items, and I will forward that to you.
I don't necessarily need to see it. I just want to make sure that it's documented.
Well, and maybe even because some of those, a couple years back, probably in 19 or 20, some of those were probably ours. It was probably, some of it was when Nikki took over, because we would just have, like, some things were either too big or too small. It would be like, the entire athletic budget would be like one line item. And that's probably an exaggeration, and it might, but there were some things that needed to be like broken apart and other things that needed consolidated. And I think we started those changes, and then everything, you know, then we had, you know, COVID, and then we've had, you know, multiple replacements. So I think that some of the things were things that we requested, and then some of them were just trying to make improvements, because we were fortunate to have one financial person for so long, and then everyone else was trying to either improve it based on what we said or put their own, you know, thing, you know, with new codes and things like that. But even if, I think what they did last year, and I understand Mike's frustration, is I know there's like a number order that you want these to be in, but maybe we can have it like, at least cluster them together. Like if it was at one time, say, 500 pencils, and now it's 700 office supplies, even though really they should be on two separate pages, maybe for like this year, they're closer, you know, they're bundled together or something, so it's easier for us to read. So we're not having to say, oh yeah, that's on this page, and then we can't, you know, it's hard for us to find it. Something like that.
Yes.
You know, not trying, you know, the easiest way possible, because we still want it done correct, and we don't want to, you know, make it longer, but that's a lot of the, you know, the history of it is.
And again, if I look at this paper that we just got, it says we're how many months into the budget? 3 months?
Yes.
4? And it says that we have spent 342.13% of the account description, 800 other budgets. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing my job, so someone can't come back later and say, well, clearly you knew you were 400% over what you budgeted in September. You know, that, and I understand it's because things are being categorized differently. I just would like, and it sounds like you're doing that, just like that, so that the next person who sees that knows the nuts and bolts of it. And then, of course, next year, hopefully things will be categorized the way you want it to be, and we won't be seeing that.
And
Thanks.
if we're over in one line item, we should be that much under somewhere else, I would assume.
Correct.
Dollar-wise, not percentage-wise, dollar-wise.
Yes.
And just real quick, correct me if I'm wrong, but things do get balanced out as well, too. Sometimes there's categories and placeholders, and we go through, monthly and look at those categorizations and then move things accordingly, too, where it's like, no, that's not where it should go. Kind of do an internal review as things are classified, as invoices come in, and as revenue comes in, too. That gets tracked in categories and sometimes moved to the appropriate cost category as well, depending on what category that gets tagged to track revenue based upon grants and other areas.
Yes.
And when we're budgeting, if we see a number on there for, say, substitute teachers, and we only spent 50% of what we had budgeted for substitute teachers the year before, then we know we need to make an adjustment there. But when those numbers don't mean anything because they're all classified differently every year, it makes it virtually impossible for us to look and say, we need to put more money toward substitutes, or we need to put less money toward, paper products, because because everything is apples to oranges every year, so.
100% agree. That's exactly very similar to the conversations we are having today about starting the budget process for the 24-25 school year. 100%.
Well, and the good thing is, right now, they're both under 15. They're both where they are supposed to be. So great job.
25% for revenue, because we're a quarter into the,
Yeah, and we're only at 15.
for expenditures, that's good. For revenue, it's not. But our revenue percentage is higher than our.
All right, we're going to go ahead and, if there's no other questions on finance at this time, we will transition into a very exciting announcement. And today is that official announcement that, one thing we know about Apple, they definitely keep things, sometimes, with like releases, right? They keep things pretty tight with their releases. When you look at like the new iPhone or the new iPad, they keep those release dates very, very tight. Well, release date today was to release the schools that were designated to become an Apple Distinguished School. The high school has had the prestige to have that designation for 4 years. Well, under the leadership that's here tonight and several who else unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, and under our principals and Mrs. Matash and Ms. Snyder, they were able to move forward, and the designation now is extended to the middle school for Apple Distinguished School. So it's an incredible accomplishment, and one that comes with a lot of hard work, especially sometimes when the rules of the application process change midway through. But they kept steadfast because they understood that this is something they believed in. This designation is not about a mark or a place, but it's about a journey. It's about the learning progress of us as a district, the learning progress of us as a collective community, and what we're able to do to provide our students because of your ongoing support. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Black, Apple Distinguished Schools Principal for the middle school. Mr. Black.
So really, I'm just kind of like the figurehead. Much of the work is done by Christine and our staff at the middle school. They just kind of tell me what they need, and I provide that within our schedule. So we have two of the prominent members. Miss Levan is on the left up there. She's our tech coach, and we build a period in the day for her to get some of that tech coaching done that does not affect the educational process of our students. And then Mr. Klingman is one of our school counselors. I know a lot of people think all the education, the technology just goes into the core classrooms engaging the students, but in our counseling office, they're working on a virtual classroom for students to log into and see some resources before they actually have to see the counselor, and maybe stuff that will help them out. So like Dr. Fox said, last year, I think, Christine can correct, I don't know the timeline, but we started in, what was it, Christine? January maybe? And we got like 98% of the way done. And right before we got done, Apple reached out to Christine and said, oh, we changed the application process. You got to start all over again. Right, so we had almost all of it done, and we had to go back and start all over again. So it's a compliment to our staff and to Lindy, who did most of the videos you're going to see up here in a second. And it just, the way our staff uses the resources, like we do the lunch and learns. It's like there's no time built in sometimes for professional development, but Lindy and other teachers take time out of their lunches to go into the room 133 where you guys meet a lot and provide different trainings for our staff to come in there and eat their lunches, and just using our resources without trying to spend exuberant amount of money to get the technology in there. And then all of our teachers that are taking the technology you guys provide them and actually engaging the students. Because it's one thing, like Dr. Fox said, there's a lot of schools that have Apple products that aren't Apple distinguished, because just because you have the products doesn't mean you're distinguished. You have to actually take that technology and engage our students. And we know we hear a lot of times, this technology, the kids don't know how to use it right, blah, blah, blah. But if you come to the middle school and you watch the teachers that actually engage their kids and use the technology correctly, you don't see the kids playing games on their iPads. They're using them for educational processes. So it's a compliment. Like I said, they tell me what they need. I try to provide in the schedule, and the majority of the work is done by our staff. And I'm just I'm the principal, but the staff is the one to commend for this honor. So if Christina, if you want to, we have 3-minute 30 videos that we submitted to Apple and to get to the distinguished Apple School.
Susquenita Middle School is a public school located in Duncannon, Pennsylvania. We house 571 5th through 8th graders with 45 faculty members. The Susquenita Middle School is committed to a quality student-centered educational program designed to meet the unique needs of the adolescent. Our school will prepare students for continued personal growth, educational development, and community responsibility. With this mission, we aim to educate and empower today's learner and graduate tomorrow's future.
Our faculty has many opportunities to empower them and build their comfort with technology integration. Our Innovation Coach is available for individual coaching sessions. We have 4 teachers who have earned the Apple Learning Coach designation, as well as an Apple Vanguard team, and 78% of our faculty are Apple teachers. Monthly lunch and learns are offered on various apps and topics. The Innovation Coach provides technology options and samples during bi-weekly faculty meetings. Short tech tips are offered in the monthly staff newsletter. Asynchronous courses are available for teachers to further their knowledge, and faculty members are encouraged to participate in a monthly technology challenge.
At Susquenita Middle School, teachers provide opportunities for students to use technology in ways that allow us to create, collaborate, and problem solve as we engage in meaningful and relevant lessons and develop essential skills to be lifelong learners. We write and publish books, create newscasts, illustrate writing, record projects, and more.
Here, we aim to provide students with personal learning experiences that show them that their work is important and valued. With technology, our students' work shows that they are creators, innovators, and problem solvers.
At SMS, student choice is important, so students can take ownership of their education. Students are given options for how they communicate their knowledge.
We like using the iPad because it is interactive. For example, if I press on the newspaper stand, it represents DNA because the newspaper gives information that we need, just like the DNA gives us information for what we look like.
Leadership opportunities are offered through Student Council and National Junior Honor Society.
Peer collaboration happens in the classroom with various types of projects. Students in the whole school collaborate each year to create a yearbook. Students use iPads to photograph activities, use iMac computer to design and publish spreads. Teachers offer unique and hands-on learning opportunities such as performing surgery, packing fast food meals, and becoming CSI agents. Student curiosity is ignited by virtual field trips to museums and faraway locations, as well as interactive scavenger hunts with fun learning challenges.
Technology promotes wellness too. Every student must complete a course to review appropriate iPad and internet use. QR codes are used to access the counselors, digital citizenship lessons are provided, and reteaching opportunities happen with our PBIS program. Our Wellness Committee publishes helpful newsletters, and our students are provided with Mind in Your Mind assemblies to teach them about mental health. To engage with the community, our school uses newsletters and Facebook. We invite local veterans and families in for our annual Veterans Day Assembly, and we visit businesses within our school district. To network outside our community, teachers publish content to the Apple Education Forum, participate in junior achievement, and invite community members into school to share their skills and knowledge. We also host artists in residence who create lasting art with our students.
Susquenita is committed to making the world a better place. In order to do this, we use a wide range of data sources to inform our decision making. We use Bright Bites and other surveys to assess how our technology is impacting our students and faculty. The invaluable data collected from these surveys gives our students and faculty a voice and allows us to continue to evolve through the feedback provided. With feedback from our teachers, we brought in an Apple professional learning specialist to meet and plan with teachers. Our innovation coach was able to collaborate in the meetings, and amazing lessons were created. Now we use this format to drive continuous improvement within our building. Web-based instructional tools such as iExcel are used to assess baseline data and continual progress of students throughout the year. We utilize Freeform to enhance teacher collaboration with a monthly technology challenge.
We love to share our success here at Susquenita Middle School. We use Facebook, weekly digital newsletters, and our school website to share innovative ways Susquenita is changing the world.
Every student at Susquenita Middle School is equipped with an iPad. All teachers are equipped with a MacBook, iPad, Apple Pencil, and Apple TVs in their classroom. Susquenita makes sure that all students have opportunities for positive growth. Students with life skills and multiple disabilities break through the barrier where they have access to technology that allows them to practice skills and show what they know through the endless capabilities of creating on an iPad. Our English language learners have access to a web-based tool called Imagine Learning, which helps them grow in the English language. Using Apple technology to collect data, share our success, and include all students, Susquenita is positively impacting the world.
Impressive.
Thank you, Mrs. Levan, and thank you, Mr. Klingerman. Would you like to say anything?
I told you I have to talk.
Oh, okay, perfect. No.
So it's my turn to take some of the stress off that.
I would also, once again, like to thank Mrs. Matash for all of your leadership, and Mr. Shepler and Mrs. Falzerano from the high school as well for all of their assistance. Because, again, when you have that connection, it's now connecting our district. It's not just about one school or one place. It's about connecting our district. So here we go. Our next goal and next aim is to continue, right? To know where we're at and continue to grow and to continue to be able to use what we've learned to be able to engage students through a variety of different ways, including, and continuing with project-based learning. And now, it's to take that learning and to bring it down to our younger learners as well. And, the hope certainly is to connect all three. And, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but certainly we've got a lot of the right people that are willing to continue to do that work. So congratulations, and let's keep rocking and rolling. Good job. All right, at this time, we're going to turn it over to Nutrition Inc. for a little overview and my favorite, no offense, samples.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jen Sigler. I was once a director here, but I am now a regional manager for the nutrition group. Very excited to be back here. And this is Ed Fair, who is our director of food and nutrition. So this year our main goal is actually focusing on getting back to basics. We all know within the past few years we've been forced not only to follow COVID regulations, inflation, lack of products, and also finding those dedicated employees in order to take care of our students. And honestly, as a manager within the food service operation, this has been one of the hardest things for me to deal with because we all know that many of our students, these are some of the only meals they are receiving. So I also personally feel that many of our products have been forgotten, or many of our programs have been forgotten about. This isn't because we haven't cared. It's honestly because, we were just trying to feed our kids and take care of everything. So, click. So now we're actually getting back to where we need to be and fulfilling our promises to our clients and in different areas. One of these, first of all, is our in-cost controls. So we definitely depend upon our corporate purchasing managers in order to not only supply us with the most cost-effective, best quality, but also those entrees that actually meet all of the regulations within our programs. Increasing participation. As of right now, within our food service operation, we are exceeding in all areas, including breakfast, lunch, and a la carte. We have we're doing really great for the beginning of the school year. Promotion of the program. This is definitely an area where we try to, definitely promote many different things within our program. One of these things coming up is our Lunch for Life program, which will be coming up here in October, where we will actually be, this will involve our kindergartners, and the nutrition group actually covers free lunches for all of them. This is a way to kind of get them interested in our program, and hopefully to get them more involved and get them in there on a daily basis. Also, nutrition education. We don't only want our lunch services or breakfast services just to be involved with the students coming through the lunch line. We also want them to enjoy our services and have a little fun during it, and also learn a little bit about nutrition. And lastly, events. So actually, Ed will actually be starting to bring in more events, which he'll be talking about here in a little bit also. And for those of you who don't know that much about Nutrition Group, just a little bit, we are actually a family-owned business who have been around since 1975. We only started with a few small accounts. We actually are spread out now in about 7 states, about 276 accounts, not only in the K through 12 division, but also in facilities management and commissary. And I personally have been with the company for the past 10 years. I started as a kitchen manager and worked my way to a regional manager. So there is a lot of growth within the company.
So the open house, kindergarten orientation, there's an excellent turnout from both the children as well as the families. My staff during this event, actually, we had cut out pictures of food that we posted onto the trays to attempt to educate the children as they went through the tray line as to what offer versus serve meant and how it would make a complete reimbursable tray. Although we did have pictures, a few of the children did ask for chicken patties and other items that were not available at the at that time, but it was a very successful event in all aspects.
So in every year, we actually gather together with our directors, our regional managers, and our upper management before school starts. This is kind of a way to get us all focused and get us revved up for the school year. Not only that, it also gives us those training hours that are required from USDA and PDE. But this year's theme was actually based on positivity. And this was how our kindness actually feeds others and changes the world.
This was actually the first summer seminar that I attended since we opened the company, and as Jen said, the focus was positivity. We had to read Positive Dog, which was an interesting book. It tries to focus the management on reinforcing positive aspects of situations that may not be considered to be so positive. Staffing shortages. Well, positive thing is, Joe might be able to show off his cooking abilities today. Trying to point out positive aspects of certain situations that might, bring the staff down. That's all with that one. Okay, so the
Hold on. And also, before the school year starts, we also gather with our hourly staff. This is also same concept to get them revved up for the school year, and in order for them to get their training hours that are required through PDE and USDA. So there are many different topics that we do have every year, and this actually gives our directors the opportunity to train our hourly staff. This year, our Professional Development Day was actually held at Susquenita University in Selinsgrove.
So this was also the first professional development day for myself. This year we actually focused on civil rights training, the offer versus serve concept, HACCP, policies and procedures, cost control, safety in the environment, Chef's Corner, which is we have a corporate chef that gives us all different tidbits on cooking as well as cost control, and then of course allergy management, which is essential in this day and age. Staffing in Susquenita. Currently, the high school is currently fully staffed as of this week. Staffing has been the most difficult thing that I've had to deal with since being here. It's a difficult recruiting area. I'm having some difficulty in the middle school staffing, but we still have dedicated employees that are carrying out the daily operations with support from corporate staff. And at the elementary, we just appointed a new manager there, and we do have some new staff coming within the next 2 weeks. So we are improving staffing-wise, but it still remains one of the primary issues. Is that me? Moments Matter. Moments Matter is it's a program that the P&G company promotes where a regional manager or a director of food and nutrition can nominate their school and or their staff, particular kitchens, for outstanding performance. And actually Susquenita, the staff here at Susquenita won last year. So the corporate staff came out, gave everybody bonuses, awards, recognition. It's a way to help increase employee morale.
And we also offer now a new TNG charity program. And this is basically to help anyone out there, any of our hourly or salaried employees who have experienced any kind of hardships or traumatic events. And also, we also started a new sponsored scholarship and grant program for our student workers. This has definitely been taken off. I know within our area this past year, we actually awarded quite a few student helpers. So I know personally when I had worked here, I think I had at least 3 student workers that were employed at the time. So it's always a great thing to give those students the extra opportunity. So we'll definitely continue to support these needs.
We had one last year, and I did interview one so far this year, but still keep in contact with the high school counselors for possibilities.
And I also talked a little bit about nutrition education. So like I said, we're going to try to bring everyday nutrition into our cafeterias. These events will happen during our breakfast services and lunch services. And Ed is going to talk a little bit about some of these new programs which we're going to bring in.
So basically, the nutrition group gave each director of food and nutrition different topics which they could choose from. So here at Susquenita, actually within the next month, we are going to be adopting the Fruity Fridays, the Get Excited About Breakfast, and the Moolalicious smoothies. Excuse my English. The smoothies actually will involve Molly the cow, which children just love this. Still currently looking for volunteers, though.
In the past, we actually had Liz Robinson, who would be our cow. Oh, interesting.
One day my grandmother was president.
So no, but I am taking volunteers.
All those in favor?
All right, let's move it along.
Kindergarten children. It's going to be an interactive breakfast to try to get them more interested in nutrition and the actual program that we have currently going.
Oops, you skipped one there.
Sorry.
So customer engagement is definitely the most important thing that matters to us. So some ways we do that is by student taste testing, such as with our Wellness Wednesday programs, where we like those students to try something new. Also, something like tonight where we brought some different board sampling. So we hope that you all try the items over there. We actually brought some queso with chips, and we brought some of our new dumplings and breakfast items, so please take some of them with you. Another way we do this also is through our Youth Advisory Council, meetings, and also our Parent Advisory Council meetings. So this actually gives us the opportunity to know what their likes, dislikes are, and how to improve our program. Because this is truly what makes our program a success, is actually getting everyone's opinion on things.
September review, so this is actually just a review of the numbers from the past month, sort of budgeted in comparison to the actual numbers. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner a la carte, they have all been over budget, which is good, and we expect that they should still be climbing for the next few months. First week of school is always slow, but then after that it's really slow. Year in review. So these are pictures of events that have occurred since my tenure, which has been almost a year now. We do the selling strawberries, decorating, distributing. Of course, that occurs right around February 14th. Earth Day is a big one at the elementary school. That's when we do the dirt cups, which is actually Oreo cookie crumbs and gummy worms. Personally, but kids love it. So in the high school, we have the self-service salad bar. We have made some improvements to that in terms of setting up self-serve fruit, condiment bars. We also have the self-service pizza. And what else? Oh, the hot a la carte items actually are a new thing for the to help increase participation in the high school. And we have seen some improved participation.
And we also have a lot of new things to come, so.
Lower left is Dr. Seuss's birthday. Kids love that. My staff, they have outfits, and actually, well, I'm not even going to tell you what they wanted me to do, but they love actually dressing up, and the kids, they just really enjoyed that a lot. Bottom right middle is the share card. So this is another thing we've instituted again this year. We want to give children the opportunity that if they take a food item that they do not want, they can put it in the share cart. And I have seen several children just coming up and asking, for milk or a piece of fruit. There's certainly no reason whatsoever to waste that food. So this is something that we will be carrying out.
So we want to thank you all for your time tonight, and we look forward to an amazing school year together. If you ever have any questions, please feel forward to reach out to Ed or myself. We are here to assist you with anything. So thanks a lot. And does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
First, Jen, I want to congratulate you on this position. I don't think I realized that when you left. And I just want to thank you again for the great job that you and the staff and everyone did during 2020 and the end of 2020 and the putting the meals together and then doing everything. And the year following that, you did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
But my question is about that Food for Life or the kindergarten program. Did you say that the kindergartners get free lunch?
Yes. So
Do our kindergartners get free lunch? Do
So
we know our kindergartners get free lunch?
we will be putting.
Just on that particular
We will be.
Oh,
putting-
oh, oh.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
How
It's
many?
like,
So,
it's like a 3-day event that we do.
so just, okay.
Yeah, so we'll actually put out information and flyers and stuff to the
Got it.
parents and everything. So I wish we could do that every day.
I'm always for free lunches. So
Yes.
anytime you tell me that
Me
there's going to be a
too.
free lunch, I'm going to push for as many
Yes.
days as possible, okay?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you very much. And Jen and Ed, thank you for your leadership. Jen, you've been a great mentor. And Ed, you've done a great job in just a year, of bringing back a lot of things, communicating, being visible. Ed participates in a lot of our cabinet meetings, and he comes right at the beginning and allows us to ask any questions, and avails himself and makes himself available, if we have any questions, and communicates with us if things are difficult and what he needs from us too. So it's been a really good partnership, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll transition. If anybody wants some of the snacks that are over there, the queso, please. And please understand that this, the food, all the equipment that's in the cafeteria can't run without power. So it's a good segue in to Greenworks Energy. We have Mr. Doug Nidich, as well as retired superintendent, Mr. Robert Musselman. What's that? Rick. Mr. Mr. Musselman. That's right. Who's going to be here as well to help as we transition to our next presentation. Sorry, sir.
That's all right. Usually it's other names people use, like hey you, or I will say some of them, right? Yes, all works, yes. Never heard of it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to you this evening. Rick and I are both with Greenworks Development. Rick was the superintendent of the Midwest School District in Middleburg. They finished their solar project in November of 2020, so they're about 3 years into it now. I'm going to go over some solar basics with you, and then let Rick talk to you about his experience doing this as a superintendent. A couple of things about Greenworks Development. We are located in Harrisburg. We're not that far away, Mechanicsburg, Harrisburg. We're the largest commercial solar developer in Pennsylvania. We've done over $350 million worth of solar since 2010. We've done things like the Millburn, New Jersey Water Authority project that we finished up about 6 months ago. That's the largest floating solar array in the U.S. We've got a pretty big toolbox for doing these sorts of things, and we do work all over the Mid-Atlantic. Significantly, our partners are all CPAs who've been doing solar work exclusively since 2010. I'm an engineer that's been doing a lot of solar development for years and years. When I talk about energy, I talk about the fact that solar is really not a technology business. The technology's been around since 1954. That's when the first panel was sold. Solar is a tax accounting and finance business. If you understand how to put together the tax, the accounting, and the financial details around this and bring all the incentives into place, you create successful solar projects, and that's what we do. There are a number of kind of nuanced things that you need to understand about solar when you talk about this. When you put up a solar array, which we're proposing for Susquenita, you save on your electricity cost, obviously, because you're going to put up a generating system that's going to generate your own electricity, but at the same time, you're going to generate what are called SRECs, or Solar Renewable Energy Certificates. Those SRECs are not electricity savings. Those SRECs are green certificates that you produce by generating solar-generated electricity. Utilities, by state mandate, have to produce a certain amount of their electricity by solar generation. It's 0.5% of their total generation right now is what they're mandated to produce via solar. They can either do that themselves, which for different reasons they don't do themselves all that much, or they can buy those credits from people like you who produce solar-generated electricity, and that's what creates the market for these certificates. So Greenworks SRE, our partner, we're an aggregator and broker of those SRECs. We'll counsel you, or you can talk with other folks as well, but we'll counsel you on when to hold your SRECs, when to sell them, what the best time in the market is. It's like you're generating stock certificates every month when you generate solar electricity, and you can hold those stock certificates for a couple of years if you think the market's going to go up, or you can sell them every month if you choose to do that, and we'll work you through all of that. So in a case like yours, we're talking about when you put up an array, you've got two sources of revenue then. On the left there under the electricity bolt, you're going to save about 7.2 cents per kilowatt hour on your electricity costs directly because you're going to generate your own instead of buying it from the grid. You're also, though, going to generate solar renewable energy certificates, and those things are currently worth about 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So they're worth more than half of what your current electricity cost is. Those are very significant certificates to have your hands on. So we'll coach you through all that. The only thing you need to know about solar renewable energy certificates is that that's a supply and demand market, and the Shapiro administration is pretty serious about increasing Pennsylvania's current mandate for renewables from 8% up to 30%. That would take 0.5% of this kind of solar requirement up to 2.5% to 4% is where their target is right now. And those solar renewable energy certificates could wind up being worth twice as much as they are now or more. So they could be almost worth as much as the electricity that you're saving in the first place. Let's go to the next slide. I don't want to get into a lot of detail about all this sort of thing, but what I wanted to do is talk you through a couple of the different school district projects that we've done over the last couple of years. We've done more school district projects than anyone else in the industry, more district projects in Pennsylvania than any other developer. I wanted to walk you through some of them. That's the Central Columbia District on the screen. About halfway through assembly, we've driven all the posts into the ground, in that case on a ground array. We've put all of the metal racking in place over those posts, and you can see the panels on the left that are installed, and we're working our way up through that middle section on our way to installing all the panels. Really not that much to a ground-mounted array system. We're going to bring a piece of equipment in if we move forward here that's going to drive I-beam posts about 7 feet into the ground. We'll put racking, metal racking on those posts, put the panels on that racking, wire them together, push that electricity through an inverter that turns DC electricity into AC, through a bidirectional meter that will sell and buy electricity from the grid. So you'll generate, if you're generating in the middle of July and you're not using as much electricity as you're generating then because school's not in, you'll push your excess electricity to the grid. And Pennsylvania's a net metering state, which means you'll get full retail value for the electricity that you push to the grid. At night, right now, obviously you're not generating solar electricity. You'll buy electricity from the grid at the same cost that you sold it for. And what we've done in this case is laid out an array that will produce just a little bit more electricity over the course of a year than the district uses. Let's go to the next slide. So the Tamaqua Area School District, we finished in November of 2020. It supplies 100% of the district's electricity. I won't read over all the details here, but basically with their system, for the first 5 years of the system life, we're going to save them over $230,000 a year. They're under a program in which investors, in their case, bought their system, and the other school examples that I'm going to show you are the same. Investors purchased the system, so the school didn't have any out-of-pocket cost at all. The investors operated and maintained the system for an initial 5 years, and they had to hold the system for 5 years in order to hold their investment tax credit from the federal government. And then we encouraged the districts to buy the system out after 5 years, and that's where their savings go up. In your case, and I'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes, there are really, really good reasons why, in your case, there's reason to buy your system outright up front. So not have investors put it up, but buy it outright. And I'll let Mr. Holmes talk you through some of those details. But basically, I'll show you the structure that you're going to probably use if you move forward that will be a little bit different structure here that's actually more cash advantageous to you. In the Pottsville School District case, they didn't have land available for a ground mount array. They put solar on all of their rooftops. We offset about half of their electricity cost, and they saved over $250,000 a year, or they will save after they buy their system out, over $10 million of savings over 40 years. We got their electricity cost down to 6.6 cents a kilowatt hour. Rick, I'll let you talk about your experience at Midwest.
Well, Doug certainly is a numbers guy, and as he said from the very beginning, this isn't just actually an energy presentation, it is actually a finance presentation. In Midwest, we were always looking for ways that we could save money and find the coins under every couch and figure out ways we can actually continue to fund things. And one of the things that I had always talked about, and as an educator, and 13 years up here at Newport, and and I was then went to Midwest, and I was looking at ways that I could always fund things, and so we had the opportunity to take some of our land and convert it into a solar array. And for us, it was a huge savings because it was going to cut down on our electricity, but also we were going to be able to sell those SRECs. And so I looked at it as a huge win for the Midwest School District and a real advantage for us to move forward. And I know you guys all struggle with the finances, so at some point in time, you have to look at, are there ways we can significantly cut our expenses, but then also increase revenue? All the information up there on the screen, they're going to save over $15 million, and I can say that the gentleman who followed me as superintendent, he's actually putting more solar on the roofs there, and a little bit, I think, on the land, and they're going to go up to like 110, I believe, % of their energy. So they're not only going to be able to save their electricity costs 100%, but they're going to produce another 10% that they can sell and make additional money. So it was a big a win for a Midwest school district, and obviously, if there's any questions as far as like the consumer piece of it, I can certainly try to answer those, but I'm going to give it back to Doug.
Can I just ask a quick question? When did you have yours installed at Midwest? I'm sorry. What year?
We actually had it installed, and it was 19 and between 2019 and 20, and I think it was turned on in 21. I believe it was turned November 20. It was turned on, so that's when we got it turned on. And part of it, we were shut down for COVID and everything else, but they continue to work and actually have it installed.
Okay, thank you.
The last district that I'll show you as an example is the Central Columbia School District. We just finished this one a couple of months ago and turned it on. At the bottom of this slide, that's a significant number. We were able to get their electricity cost down to 2.4 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's a number that is our estimated number over the next 40 years. That's significant. When you put up your own solar array, you put up your own generating system, you control your energy cost for the life of the system. They're going to see 2.4 cents per kilowatt hours worth of electricity cost for the next 40 years. One of the things that I've told school boards for the last number of years while we've been doing this is that if you had the opportunity to take any one of your other major costs in your budget and cut it to less than half of what the cost is currently and lock it in for a 40-year period, you'd do that in a minute. If it was salary expense or building expense or anything, that's the opportunity here. Let's go to the next slide. There's the reason why you want to go solar. This is a chart of PPL's price to compare, or their default commercial electricity cost over the last couple of years. Rick at Midwest turned his system on in November of 2020, which is right in the middle of that slide, in the middle of that chart. He turned his system on in November of 2020, right before PPL's electricity cost went up 142% over the next 26 months. That is a significant increase. It's come down a little bit since then. It went up to almost 15 cents a kilowatt hour. It's come back down to 11.7. But over the next 40 years, by anyone's calculus, electricity costs are going to go up, and they're going to go up significantly. That's the reason to do solar on the screen. So we, in doing an analysis for Susquenita School District, from Mr. Holmes and from Dr. Fox, we got a copy of a recent electricity bill from every one of the meters in your system. We got a copy of your current electricity supply contract so we could understand how you're buying your electricity now. And we got a map of your campus, and they showed us where on the ground on your campus they felt were the most appropriate places to look to do solar. So we took that information over the last couple of months, and we put together the analysis for the Susquenita School District that I'm going to show you. Let's go to the next slide. That slide's a little dark, a little tough to see, to me at least, but thank you, that's good. There are the locations that were given to us for an initial layout trial. So what we did was we took your electricity bills, We figured out from your electricity bills how large a total array we needed to put up in order to be able to offset 100% or a little more than 100% of your current electricity use. And that land area is the amount of solar that you'll need to put up in order to generate, in your case, 106% of your current electricity use. That's not to mean that that's locked in stone, cast in stone. We can move that around. These are all board decisions in terms of whether you're going to move forward or not, and if you do move forward, where you're going to put the arrays. But given the information we've got now, those are the three locations that made the most sense. The most significant one is on the upper left where the cursor just was a second ago. That area is land that was just purchased relatively recently, that as I understand it, there's no other development planned for, and it just makes a lot of sense to use that ground for a solar array that's got a 40-year useful life to it. In any of these array areas, at the end of the useful life of 40 years, these are all very recyclable materials. It's mainly metal and glass. We'll come in, pull the arrays out of the ground at the right time, recycle that material, and the ground's going to be returned to the state that it is now. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, the arrays as shown will offset 106% of the district's electricity use currently, and that's a 4.5 megawatt DC ground array, which right now, unless someone puts up a larger one, I believe would be the largest array at a K-12 in Pennsylvania. So here is the summary, just like I showed you the summaries of the other school districts a couple of minutes ago. Here's the summary of what a direct purchase up front system would mean for Susquenita School District. We've set this system up to offset 106% of the district's current electricity use. Again, that's a number that the board can decide on. You could go less than that, you could go more than that. That's what we've targeted at this point. This assumes a Susquenita upfront unfinanced purchase, or maybe a financed purchase. I had put this down as an unfinanced purchase. I'll leave that up to a discussion with your group. So you're currently buying your electricity at 7.1 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a pretty good number. That's actually the best number of any district that I've worked with over the last couple of years, since the increases over the last couple of years. Your net cash flow from year 2 on, after you purchase the system in year 1, your net cash flow from year 2 on would be over $640,000 in year 2, and it would go up from there. Your net cash flow over 40 years is estimated at $25 million, and that's at 7.1 cents of initial electricity cost, and our analysis shows increases of 3% a year. You can put in whatever you want to put in for what you think electricity costs are going to do over the next 40 years. That's probably a really conservative number given where electricity costs can go. At the current system design, when you look at the second bullet point there, we're figuring that your 40-year average cost of solar generated electricity is going to be 0.5 cents a kilowatt hour. That's a pretty low number. Basically, what that means is that that's going to lock your cost of electricity in, for the most part, for the next 40 years. It's going to save taxpayers money. It's going to mean you can spend more money in the classroom instead of on utilities. And you can use the array and the data that come from the array to educate your students about electricity or about energy in general. One of the things that I've talked to a lot of school boards about is the fact that your students are going to be living in an increasingly energy conscious world. When I was in school at Steel High, energy was free and it came out of the wall and you didn't care how it was generated, and it just was kind of there. At this point in the game, energy is going to get really expensive. In California, at peak time of day right now, they have a time of day pricing scheme. You can spend 45 cents a kilowatt hour on electricity. If you don't understand energy and you don't understand what you're doing with all of that, you're at a significant disadvantage. The Midwest District is already using the data from its array to educate its students about energy. Central Columbia is doing the same thing. That's a significant advantage in my mind. So if we can go to the next slide, there is a 40-year, and we won't get into all the details of this, but we do an analysis of every system that we design, This is the analysis that we've done for the Susquenita School District. It basically shows every one of the 40 years of useful life of the system, and it shows all the pieces of income, or all the parts of income on the left side of the spreadsheet, SREC income and electricity savings, and then all of your payments, and in your case, it's just a principal payment up front, $8.2 million of principal paid in up front. And then in column L on the right-hand side, it shows your net cash flow. So you'd spend money up front, $8.2 million. When you go down to the bottom of column L, if you would scroll it down, there you go. There's your $25.5 million worth of savings. But if you go to the upper left of the spreadsheet, and you're doing a really good job following me on that, if you go to the upper left of the spreadsheet, you can see that we started at 7.1 cents a kilowatt hour. The real, and that contract, if I understand it correctly, is in place until the end of next year. The question would be, in your case, what that 7.1 cents per kilowatt hour would do after your current contract runs out. I've got a number of schools I'm working with right now that are at 9, 10, 11 cents a kilowatt hours worth of recent contracts. Those savings would jump tremendously, assuming your electricity costs are going to go up that much.
The $25 million in savings, does that include the $8 million or not?
Yes, that nets it out. After the $8 million, you would save $25+ million after you'd already spent that $8 million.
But
the
that-
$8 million is subtracted out of that.
So the savings would be
Great question.
No,
Yep,
but that was unfinanced, so we would have all of the finance charges. That was an unfinanced
That's
savings.
unfinanced. And again,
So if
that's
we
a
finance it, we would have the interest on that,
Meaning
meaning that we would pay it right out. We're not going to finance the money.
not through that.
Not financed through them.
No, I thought he meant that we would pull it out of like capital reserve and not finance it at all.
And that's a conversation between you.
We'll ask him, is that number based on no financing costs at all?
Correct. You can see the
Yeah.
principal and interest columns there. There's no interest
There's
at
no
all.
interest there.
Principal is one time right up front.
So all of the interest that we would be financing would have to take out of that $25 million savings.
But we would be financing not through them, but through other means.
Correct, but he's not including any financing in that number. Yeah.
Exactly. We've given your administration, we've given Dr. Fox and Mr. Holmes this in Excel format, so you can plug in whatever your principal and interest costs are going to be, and you're still gonna see really, really significant savings. And you can take your electricity cost or your SREC values and plug in best case and worst case there to see where your savings would go on the high side and on the low side. We've done lots of worst case analyses for school districts in situations like yours. We make sure that at least you're going to save significant amounts of money on your system in the worst case. And in the best case, the best case would be if the whole rest of the world's electricity cost goes crazy, which it could, and you would save a truckload of money because you wouldn't have to buy that electricity from the grid.
Can you answer some questions for me? So the CREC credit, is that already calculated into this number?
Yeah, it is. That's in column, scroll over to the left a little bit. Yeah, it's right there in SREC income. So that assumes, I'm showing the SREC values on the second column from the left, solar renewable energy credit unit value. We're starting at $35 per credit, which is conservative right now, leaving that, and this is anyone's guess. You have to plug in your best guess into the spreadsheet. So we put $35 a certificate in for the first 15 years, dropped it to 25 for a couple of years, and then taken it down to 15. If Governor Shapiro is successful in taking the 8% renewables target up to 30% in Pennsylvania, that could take those SREC values up significantly. We try to be as conservative as possible in these sorts of analyses because I want you to go in with eyes open, but that's a volatile number, as is electricity cost. Both of those two income numbers are volatile,
So
you could say are up and down.
Why do you think the number will go down as the life goes on when we're, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just throwing out numbers that I'm thinking off the top of my head because I don't have this information in front of me. New Jersey's paying $150 and New York is paying $300. And as our electricity demand goes up, why would you think our credits aren't going to go higher?
It's a supply and demand issue, so it's all a question of how, and energy is regulated on a state-by-state basis. The federal energy, there is no federal energy policy at all. It's all state by state. New Jersey and Massachusetts and California have managed their energy portfolios, I guess I could say more responsibly than Pennsylvania has. There's a significant push now in the legislature to get from an 8% renewables target up to 30%. And that's how that number gets affected. It's a supply and demand market. Right now, about 2 years ago, we bumped up against the top of our current demand as set by the state, that 0.5% for this kind of solar. And there's more supply coming in. That's going to depress pricing. It's econ, 8th grade econ.
So my next question is then, why is on a cash system, and this is a commercial system, obviously, why is the payout twice as long as doing it at your house?
Why is the payout twice as long as doing it at your house?
I have 3 quotes for my house currently, and the cash buyout for all 3 quotes is about 6 years.
I'd have to look at the break even on this one.
This one's 11.
Yep, sure. It's going to depend. Your electricity cost for residential is more expensive than commercial, is the big one. A big part of the reason is that 7.1 cents a kilowatt hour. At your house, I don't know what your current electricity rate is at the house. My guess is that it's not 7.1 cents a kilowatt hour.
No, I think they calculated it at like 11, but it's actually higher.
That makes a huge difference. If I had that spreadsheet live on my computer right now and I changed 7.1 to 11, that 11 years would go down to like 5.5 or 6. I'm spitballing a little bit, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I just think that the credits here are way underestimating, and I think, honestly, the kilowatt hours are probably way underestimating. Because I think we're surrounded by states that are no longer going to make coal, fossil fuels, nuclear, and they buy a ton of electricity from us already.
Yep.
And our credits are going to go up because these other states are going to take more stuff offline faster than we are, and they're going to have to buy our electricity.
Yep.
See, and I don't know that we can say that because, as he mentions, it's a supply and demand thing. So if they never change, at least in Pennsylvania, if they never change the maximum or minimum amount that electric companies have to purchase of these SRECs, and you've got more schools and more companies putting out these solar arrays, you're going to have a supply go up, and you're going to have the electricity company saying, I met my quota, I don't need to buy anymore. So then the SREC's going to go down. The only way that goes up is if there's a legislative thing that changes underneath the Shapiro administration, and the next administration can come in and change it back. So you really don't know what that's going to be through the course of 40 years. It's a guessing game.
Exactly.
Educated, but guessing game.
That's it. I'm actually going to be speaking in the Capitol next week. I spend about 4 or 5 hours a week in the Capitol talking about solar policy with legislators. I've been asked to speak in the Capitol next week about the bill, about the fact that Pennsylvania currently is way behind every state around it except Ohio in its renewable policy. We're at 8% right now, renewables. Every state around us except Ohio is at least 30%, if not 100% in Virginia's case. And we're still fooling around a little bit at 8%. If you go from 8% to 30%, which is Governor Shapiro's target, that SREC value goes up significantly. The SREC value goes up significantly. That certificate value that we're talking about.
But the cost it's going to get up. We're going to make less because there are going to be more people producing.
I think it's going to be a trade-off. You're going to have the demand go up because it's going to go to 30%. But then over time, the more people you have putting these arrays in, the more you're going to have supply, and then it's going to adjust out. So yes, the value could go up for a period of time. Then as more people put arrays in, it could come back down. I mean, you have a lot. The other thing I have a question about is the actual value of the electricity kilowatt hours itself. I noticed on the big increase did happen with the change in administration, right? So 2020 was where we were kind of flat for quite a long time, and it went up. There was a lot of energy policy changes that happened during that, right? So we don't really know what would happen if the administration changes again. and we open up fossil fuels and whatever, I think there's still a lot of volatility there over the next 40 years that we're
And you're
gaining
right,
on.
you just don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
I've got a pretty good sense that over 40 years, electricity costs are gonna go up and go up significantly. That's what's going on in the rest of the country right now and in all of the rest of the world at this point. What I do know right now is that all of the Inflation Reduction Act has taken the 26% federal tax credit for solar and bumped it up to 30%. And there's adders. You're in an energy community here, that's got a 10% additional to that. So you'll actually, if you do this as a direct purchase as a district, you'll see a check in a year or so for 40% of the total cost of the system as a direct treasury check to the district. That's significant. That's the sort of thing you don't want to pass up on. And at this point, when solar incentives line up the right way, which they do for districts, that's why we're doing so many of them right now. I've got 6 other districts that in the next couple of months are probably going to move forward with their arrays, and we've already done a handful of them now. Everything's lined up right now to put the incentives in your favor. And once you get the system up, you're going to be saving on your electricity for the next 40 years, and that electricity cost is going to continue to go up like crazy.
I guess I just question how you really know that the electricity costs are going to go up like crazy.
I don't
Well, they
know.
have, look, I have the whole thing here for the last 10 years. They're pretty flat, to be honest with you, until the last change of administration. I'm not saying that that's.
They've gone up.
But they didn't go up 40,000, they haven't gone up 144%. Not over 40 years.
So I think for us in our instance, one of the things we're looking at right now is, again, going back to the energy contract that we signed, that you signed previously was legendary, historic, right? At what was it?
3.47 cents per kilowatt hour.
3.4 cents. And even if we got close to 10, 11 cents, we're still looking at probably a $500,000 increase to our budget just on electricity alone, looking at our projected usage. So that is why, when we begin to have these conversations about looking at electricity, for us, it's how can we reduce some of that onset that we know is going to happen? Because we know projection-wise and talking to energy consultants, we're not going to get into that legendary contract again. And yet, we're looking at something that we can control, and then hopefully having something that's not hopefully, but something that is going to have a return on our investment. So it's taking care of a cost and then generating revenue, which is something that's sometimes that happens in capital projects that you don't get. You don't get a return on that investment in terms of a return financially. You get a return on investment otherwise, right? In terms of learning atmosphere, et cetera. That's an important return on investment, right? That's not quantifiable. But in this instance, it's an opportunity to also generate revenue back. But we'll talk more about that in the future. I don't mean to derail.
And we don't qualify for any federal or state rebates
No.
because we don't pay taxes.
Well, the federal is the investment tax credit that you can get a direct treasury check for, so there's the federal benefit.
Yeah, but so can you explain to me how we qualify for that? Because you have to take that off your taxes, and we don't pay taxes.
Exactly. So part of the Inflation Reduction Act, when it was passed, enabled a not-for-profit like a school district to take that investment tax credit, which ordinarily you'd need to have tax liability to take advantage of. You're able now, as a not-for-profit, to take that as a direct check from the Treasury. So that's what happened there.
And when can you take that?
After the system's complete, you
have 5 years
submit
still?
for that. Yep. You can take that direct Treasury check and apply for it after you complete your system.
And is that 30% of the $8 million?
It's actually 40% of I think in your case, no, you weren't in an energy community, so it's 30% of the $8 million, that's correct.
And you don't have that anywhere on your form?
Yeah.
I didn't see it on there.
Yeah, it's right up there on IRA tax bill.
Yep.
So that's already off the $8 million.
Okay. that guaranteed, or is that something you apply for and you might be granted it or not?
Currently guaranteed.
Is that guaranteed?
It's a guarantee.
How does that, I want to know how that money factors into that end number.
Yep, so you can read across that whole first line, year one, and everything so your savings on solar electricity savings and your SREC income add up to the total cash inflow. Your 30% federal direct pay in the column before that is part of that. It all nets out. So your solar rebate is part of your income. The 30% federal tax that should have been in, my apologies, I should have looked at that particular feature here.
I don't see that number anywhere in there.
You know what, I'm gonna, honestly, if I don't know, I'm gonna go double check that, and I will be back to you tomorrow morning on that. I wanna make sure of that before I give you a final answer.
Is it possible that the 2,463 was divided up equally and included monthly inflow?
I'm gonna, no, that would be a one-time check. So I'm gonna multiply the 8.2 million times 0.3 is 2.46. Yeah, so that's 30% of the 8.2 million, but I want to double check that and get back to you tomorrow. I'll be back to both of you tomorrow morning on that.
Because as I'm seeing it on there, it's not being taken off of the 8 million.
Yeah, I understand.
So we wouldn't get it year one anyway, which I'm totally fine with. So basically, our install number is really, unless you come back with something different, our install number is only 5.8.
Your net install number.
Our net install number, so we would only have to borrow 5.8 as long as we had the 2.4 to float for a year.
Yep. And honestly, while I'm looking at this, that should have all played out while I'm looking across that first line. There's a chance that we missed that 2.4 in that net cash flow column L, which would have decreased the payback.
Which will decrease the payback period to about 7 or 8 years.
For not knowing that answer offhand. I will check that. I'll be back to you guys tomorrow morning first thing.
I have another question. Are there insurance costs associated with, in terms of how does our insurance for the property, or if they get smashed or storms or things like that?
Once the array's finished, we'll ask you to put the array on your property insurance for your entire campus. And all you're doing is adding a little bit to your property insurance overall. It either won't add anything to your premiums or it'll add a little bit to your premiums. We've put up over 1.5 million panels since 2010. I've had to replace 6 of them out of those 1.5 million because a commercial lawnmower threw a rock at a panel and broke it. There's no moving parts to a solar panel, so there's not a lot that goes wrong with them. That's why there's a 30-year output warranty on these when we install them. It won't add much to your insurance policy for your campus at all. The only other thing on the sheet in line 21, year 21, highlighted in yellow there in the kind of right middle of the screen, is $194,000 worth of an inverter replacement cost. The inverters are the devices that turn the DC electricity that the array produces into AC. Those guys will be installed with a 20-year warranty. We're figuring that in year 21, you're going to have to replace them. That's the way warranties work, right? So we put in a full replacement cost in year 21. Other than that, the spreadsheet is pretty straightforward, and I'll check that 30% tax credit and get back to you right away.
Is there any, oh boy, anybody, I don't believe this, weather, if weather damages it like hail or ice or something like that?
Great question. They're designed to withstand hail. They're designed to withstand really any normal weather occurrence. A rock that a commercial mower throws, they're not designed to absorb. But other than that, they're designed to absorb all the rest of that. It's a great question.
Have you had any that were installed locally that, or you're in the process of maybe looking at, that are not rural, that don't necessarily have a lot of the extra land to do? Have you been doing any, given that you're a sort of Harrisburg area-based company?
Well, we do work all over the Mid-Atlantic, so we've done rural, we've done urban, we've done everything in between. I've done projects in Washington DC. We've done projects for lots of school districts like Central Columbia and Midwest that had land. We've done Pottsville, where the Pottsville district was in the middle of town, and they didn't have any land available at all, so we've
Yeah.
done everything in between.
But has there already been anybody like real local, like local, that we could?
Middleburg's not that far away.
Well, I mean-
We're 40 minutes away if you wanted to get up to see the Middleburg.
No, I just was more curious, since that you were a company based here, if there was somebody right around here that has been
We've
done.
done Susquenita Township on their roof.
Okay.
That's not that far away at all, but it's all a rooftop project.
Right.
Got to think if there's a ground array like the one we're proposing here.
Okay.
I mean, I think one of the things you have to think about, Leanne, is until 2021, the electricity here was dirt cheap. So there was no reason to do it. It didn't mathematically make sense at that point.
Correct, and I'm glad you brought that up, because
But
we really don't
electricity's
have.
not gonna go down
We
unless they
don't
figure
really
out how to
have
make
a
it for
lot of
free.
data, though, because these are all fairly very new, and we're expanding out for 40 years. I think that there's a lot of unknowns there. He's acknowledged that. I mean, we don't know.
I do understand that, but every liberal in the United States wants to turn off every nuclear and fossil fuel power plant there is. Why do you think Germany right now is going back and they're trying to reopen their fossil fuel things? Because they don't have enough electricity because Russia cut it off. So if you close all that stuff, we don't have enough electricity in the country.
And mind you that I don't get into the environment or climate change or anything like that when it comes to these conversations. Solar is the least expensive way to produce electricity that there is at this point. And if you do it the right way, and I really feel that we're doing it the right way in this case, you wind up with really low electricity costs that are going to stay flat or stay very low for a 40-year period. That's the reason why you do this. You know, if I've got an environmentalist in the room, I don't need to hit him over the head with the fact that this is an environmental project too. This is to save money for the district.
So, just looking to 3 areas, if you put the map back up, the one area is over a wetland. Would that be able to be done there?
We've looked at that preliminarily, and we've decided that it looks good enough that we're going to move forward with it. The first thing that would happen after we would sign an agreement, assuming we're going to sign an agreement, is we'll get our site engineers up here to review everything that's been proposed and make sure that everything is completely up to speed before we move forward. So right away after we'd sign, we'd get an engineering group up here that'll look at things exactly like that. And if we'd had to shift things around and move some of the array out of a wetland area and move it somewhere else, we'll do those sorts of things. If you want to scale up a little bit here, take it away a little bit more there, for whatever reason, we can do that, and then we move forward with the project. So, yeah, we'll look for wetland issues and any other issue when we come up for the site review.
How high are they off? Like, are they?
Minimum 3 foot height off the ground, 3 foot high off the ground at the low end, about 7 feet high off the ground at the high end, about a 25-degree angle. 25-foot spacing row to row, and continuous panels in each row. Midwest is grazing sheep in their array. We're going to fence each one of these array areas when we do them. Midwest and Central Columbia are grazing sheep in their arrays. They've got their Future Farmers of America clubs that are maintaining the sheep with some help from local farmers. They've turned it into a total sustainability project, which is kind of a cool thing.
Was there anywhere else other than these 3 areas that you looked at on our property? I'll be honest with you, I'm not loving the one right by the elementary school, right up against the road. I think it's unsightly. If you look at all of the other ones that you've done, they've been nicely tucked behind their districts, and it doesn't affect the aesthetic of the property.
Sure, I think these are just subject to where we're having conversation of where we could get to 106%. That's all an area of discussion. Tucked by the elementary school, some of the reason was also to provide a barrier for some physical security, kind of getting 2 options, because the fencing does stop in and around a point there. So we wanted kind of a physical barrier there. I think, you know, when I look at it, I kind of see modernization, and I look at it and see progress, and I look at it and I want our kids to see that and talk about it, because I think it's a lot of good STEM-related conversations that could happen. But that,
Sorry.
I understand.
I
and
see
that's-
ugly.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. Our campus is beautiful.
It is,
and
and I do
agree.
think that there's
And that's
something to
why
that.
everything is, you know, one thing we do have, which is a conversation we had and we're very proud of, we have space. And how we use that is really negotiable where we want to. It's getting to the number and where can we use, and what are some of those other spots that we have the ability to be able to use. So, yeah, that is all able to be discussed,
yeah.
for sure.
Well, and I think
This is where I
that,
step back and let you decide all of those things and then let us know.
well, and that, I do, just to piggyback on what Leanne said, because that's my least favorite spot. I get the other one because of the security, and I get that one because of the security, but does it have, this is probably going to sound dumb, because I know that it's solar panel, and I know what the sun is, and I know all those things. I honestly do. But we do have this land that is surrounded by trees. Is that too surrounded by trees?
We can look at that. You know, I don't love taking trees down to put solar up.
Well,
but
I don't want to put a lot of them down. A lot of it is down because it was a football practice area. Do you see that bald area that
Yep.
That's all I'm saying.
We can look at that. You know, this is
Because
all.
we have weird property, like we have weird properties, like I just want you to look at the face value.
Yep.
The other thing that worries me is depending on that height of there, if they're going to give us an issue with the site view and stuff of the turn, where
Well,
this
sure,
one
you
is
gotta do
here.
traffic, yeah, you gotta look
Yeah.
at traffic issues in the whole 9 yards. Yep. And again, there's an engineering analysis that'll be
Sure,
done
sure,
on
sure.
all this before we move forward.
When-
But yeah, if you as a board decide that you've got other land available and you'd like to try to take something away from over here because of aesthetics or whatever reason, and move it over there, you know,
But-
this is a starting point.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I think we have that I'm proud of, that I think we have as an advantage is our campus is so, it's big enough to do this, but we're also, like, all of our schools are right here.
Absolutely.
So all of our schools are going to see the benefit and everything. It's not just, this is just going to the high school, or this is just, yeah.
Exactly. You've got a great situation here. You really do.
I think this is just another, maybe this is something we'll just continue to discuss later on, but when we bought that piece of property, we bought that with the thought of a potential expansion project here. If we're looking at putting solar array on there, we're looking at 40 years down the road. We've now just gotten rid of that as a possibility, or we're removing them. And I guess I'm perplexed at why we would, I don't know. I think that's something to be talked about, because that's not what when we bought the property, that wasn't what we were thinking of.
Yeah, we certainly bought the property to be able to use for any future expansion that may need to occur. We actually had that discussion when we started talking about solar. With the ability to drive the pins in the ground, they can be moved. They can be relocated if that ground ever needs to be used for anything else. That will be built in to part of our, thank you. I was struggling with that term. Site preparation work that would need to occur.
But where would we go with them? That's just it. I mean, like, if we have nowhere to go with them now, like, if we have somewhere to go with them, I would say go there now, rather than go here. That would be my concern, like, you were now adding.
So, and again, you don't have to answer this question right now, because it would really be to, redesign depending. There's potential they could go on a roof. So on a new build, you could potentially put them on a roof, depending on what the roof would look like at that point.
Absolutely.
Well, and in all honesty, if we have a lot of savings and stuff now, and then things continue, with some new builds in the area come out, things like that, we're setting up, the future school to be able to, if they needed to, purchase more property. We wouldn't need as flat and stuff a property for solar panels someplace else if we had to move them. But the thought would be we'd be saving money that we would be saving.
I would just be curious if anyone investigated using the mountainside behind us and how exorbitant the cost would be to put them there, because I think that would be the perfect place. Has anyone looked into that?
Yeah, but you could get,
So
you
what?
wouldn't have to cut the whole mountain. You could
No, I have not, to be honest with you,
I
but.
at least found a bare area.
get payment for logging, because you could get logging.
I'm not sure anyone would be all that upset if we did that, like, really.
And you wouldn't have to
Except the
clear the whole
cross-country team.
mountain, but.
Isn't it gonna cost some money to cut the trees down?
But if you sold, and if you timbered it out, you'd get some money back.
So I think what we just kind of need at this point is, I think we're looking at is solar good for us as a district? Is how much can we get? We want to get to as close to 106%. We know that it could be a return on our investment. Then we need to look at where are some options that we want to take a deep dive into, including locations throughout the district and throughout the 80-plus acres that the district does own, and seeing what it could look like.
And the ground rules are, no pun intended, the rules on this sort of thing are that we try to stay with land that's 10 degrees in slope or less. If it's more than 10 degrees, it just gets awkward to put the array up and you wind up with an erosion problem. The closer you can stay to your building electric meters, the less expensive it is to put it in. It's expensive to run electric lines underground, so you want to stay as close to your meters as you can. And you'd like to not remove trees if you don't have to, but if there's an area that makes sense that you'd have to remove trees, you do what you need to do. So, it's mainly the slope of the land and the proximity to your electric meters that are the big deals. Those are the one I can't do more than 10-degree slope. The other, you drive your costs up if you go too far away.
And Leanne, since we both have the same issue with the ones in front of the elementary school, the funny thing is, though, every time I've been to a school that has had solar power that I've seen, I get excited to see it. So it may actually end up making people more excited. I mean,
Just up at Greenwood for the field hockey game.
Yeah.
They have a big array of them, but they're in the back. I mean, I still don't get excited and look out there and go, oh, wow, beautiful array. And there's that buck over there, too, that's prancing around. I just don't.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I get that. But I mean, if it's in the back of the school, it doesn't seem.
But see, maybe if we
be,
throw a couple of sheep underneath there, it will make it cuter.
Yeah, maybe.
Look,
but
she is a
I
great.
I just don't like it in front of the school. And I mean, and quite honestly, we can go on around about this, but in our feasibility study, we talked about putting in our new roundabout for buses. And now we're looking at the solar array there. So there's a lot I think we need to talk about of where we thought money was going to go. That's my thought. And I don't know whether that happens in executive session, not tonight, because it's my birthday, in case you haven't heard, or at a separate meeting,
This is not an unusual discussion at all for a school board to have at this stage of the game. There's an initial set of circumstances that we can use to build. You need to talk that over to decide where it is you want to do this and where you don't want to do it, and we'll figure it out with you.
Or if we want to do it.
Or if you want to do it, exactly. So the last slide I wanted to show you, and we've taken a lot of your time, my apologies for that, are next steps. And it's what we just talked about a second ago. Confirm that this 106% offset design is the preferred plan, or if you want to move forward at all, like we just mentioned. Any other questions, any other changes, any other modifications to the plan, now's the time to get those things on the table and sort them out. When it gets to the right point where we've agreed on all of that, we'll get a draft purchase agreement to you for review. You review and sign the agreement, and then it takes about 12 to 14 months to get the approvals and to install a system like this.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
So in your slide, you're saying that you can install it in a wetland. Is that true?
The answer is it depends. It depends on the township. It depends on the codes people looking at it. It depends on the type of wetland that we're dealing with. You can install over retention basins. It depends. And those are the things that we have to get the plan together and take to the township.
Because here's my next question.
Yep.
So we built the middle school, and when we did that, we had to buy 10 acres of property at another location and make it wetlands.
Yep.
So if there's electric poles there, could we build it there and dump it back in the grid from another location?
We can take a look at that with you. Yep. As long as it's close to the meters, right? As long as it's close to your meters.
I
it's
think
not-
the land he's
There's no
talking-
meters there.
I think the land he's talking about is about 5 miles away. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it's about 5 miles away.
Then takes that out of play.
So you can't just hook into the grid somewhere else?
Exactly. If the way it works technically, and we're getting into some technical here, but if you're within 2 miles of where your array is to your meter that you're gonna service, I can do what's called virtual net metering, where I can kind of meter it to your meter over virtual lines. It's not as cost effective for you to do that. You don't see the cash flow that you do out of a direct connection. A direct connection is the best way to do it if you have the land and it makes sense to do that on site.
You said it is impossible to do, or it's just not as cost effective to do?
If you're within 2 miles, I can virtual net meter to your meters. If you're outside of 2 miles, it's a standalone system. Yeah, if you have land, now.
Meaning what? What does that mean?
Meaning, for instance, I'm doing a lot of work in what's called agri-solar, where I'm putting solar on farms, 10 acres at a time, and I'm doing it at 3 different heights: a 3-foot height to graze sheep under, a 7-foot height to graze cattle or to do active crop production under, and a 9-foot height to run equipment under. Those farmers don't have that kind of electricity use on site. They're just leasing the land to us to put the array up. We're adding $1,500 to $2,500 per acre per year to their income. They still get to graze or farm underneath the panels, and I connect that electricity through 3-phase lines directly to the grid. If you had a 10-acre site that was 5 miles away, I could lease that ground and do that kind of a thing and generate electricity and send it to the grid, but I can't use it to offset your current electricity use.
What if we build
we
a
could get
shed there
income?
and add electricity?
If you had all that electricity use on site, but you'd have to have enough electricity use to offset. So the way that you save the most on solar is you put solar up on your site, direct connect it to your meter, and offset the use that you've got on the site already, and that's what we're talking about here. This gets into the solar puzzle of any situation we look at.
I have a quick question about
Sure.
the wetlands. So wetlands are an endangered ecosystem. Is there a way to put the solar panels in without endangering the ecosystem or the ecology of the wetlands?
It's a great question. So the question is, wetlands are endangered ecosystems. Is there a way to put solar in so that you don't disturb them all that much? We drive posts into the ground. We don't cement them into the ground. We drive I-beam posts into the ground about 7 feet deep, put racking on that, and then put the panels on that and connect it, and that's how you create a solar array. That disturbs the ground, but the panels themselves will shed water down into the ground. It doesn't, it's not like you're paving that whole area over. That's an opinion question as to how much you're disturbing the ecosystem. At the same time, you're generating clean energy, and there's the balance. So if it were a pure wetland where you've got birds, frogs, turtles, the whole 9 yards, I'm not going to go in there and drive posts into the ground and run a solar array over the top of that. If you've got a retention basin that probably is dry 11 and a half months out of the year anyway, I'm going to think more about doing that, and that's where it really depends. Yeah, we try to be sensitive to the environment while we're trying to do a relatively environmental project, right? It is. We're in a tricky balance as a planet.
Leah, that's a great question. We actually asked a question very similar, just if there was any environmental impacts on the solar panels themselves. Is there any noises associated with the solar panels too? And the answer to both of those was no. But great questions. And we asked about the idea behind a solar panel being impervious versus impervious. And my understanding is that they are impervious because the water does still drain down and collect into the soil. There's no disturbance to the earth underneath with any. Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Thanks. Leah got me. She understands what I was. She corrected me. Thank you.
Yep. But every panel is going to shed water, and that water is going to go directly into the ground. It's going to be a little stripy, right? Because it's not going to be dropping into the ground right under the panels, but you're going to be absorbing that water into the ground right below the array.
Any additional questions? And if you do, feel free, send them to Mr. Holmes and I, and what we'll do is we'll review them if we have the answer. I certainly would love to be able to answer it quickly, but I'll probably punt and send them to the experts here to be able to get us back that information.
And you'll send us an update on the finances with the 30% reduction.
I'll answer that question tomorrow morning.
Yes, and then I'll send that out collectively.
We're both pretty local, both of us within an hour here, easily within an hour here. I don't mind coming back up and having more of these conversations back and forth and doing a tweak on the array layout and trying to figure out where we can put it that everyone feels comfortable with that. I want you to make the right decision up front before we move forward, and it's worth taking a little bit of time if that's what it takes in order to be able to do that.
2 more questions.
Sure.
How much is the loss with the with the virtual metering?
I can quote it for you that way. It's 10%, 20% of.
Okay. And is it by driving or by the crow flies?
As the crow flies, 2 miles.
We might be close.
Okay. Okay. If you're within 2 miles as the crow flies, which is easy to do online, right? I can figure that out about like that. I can get you a set of cash flow numbers that would reflect a virtual metered system.
Okay.
So I think what you would need from us is the latitude and longitude, the area, correct? We'll give you the area to look at.
Circle, do just what you did on site. Just show me an expanded map, circle the area that you're thinking about, and I'll take it from there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
And we can split it up too and do some on site, which is a little more cash flow positive, and some virtually on a remote site. You could do a hybrid.
Okay.
I've talked to a lot of boards in doing what we do. You guys are a sharp board that asks a lot of great questions. Thanks for all your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, just a couple more things on the agenda as we wrap up. So I'll make this one relatively quick. I do want to make just a side note. I'll be honest, probably maybe 2 years ago when I first started, we did kind of begin to investigate solar, talked a little bit about it, had some persons come in. I was definitely at the time opposed to owning solar panels. I might have said that to some people publicly. And I think at the time it was the right decision. But now with the the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, with the potential of 30% back, it makes quick sense to own it as quick as possible to get a return on the investment as soon as possible and not give all of that treasury to an investor and us keeping that revenue generated at the beginning for us and being able to accordingly balance the SRECs and other cost savings. So the sooner we can turn on a system, the better we can be in terms of that. And we've done our due diligence of working with some, not just with our presenters tonight, but with some financiers independently looking to see if that makes the most sense. And it certainly did. So let's talk a little bit about capital CTC and capital improvement finance options. We've heard about solar arrays this evening, and just going to share and showcase some numbers. And I will reference this horizontal sheet as we go through as well, and it's been updated. So just some finance discussions continued. Our goal is to allow for some options and discussions to see if we can come up with an agreement at this time if you wanted to for October board, or if you wanted to wait, we certainly could. But I'm willing to see what your thought is at this point. And again, we're not obligating to a particular project, we're obligating to look at a number. Again, what we talked about was the option of solar this evening. In our last presentation that we presented on finance options for CPCTC, we presented one that's included in here. It was about an $8 million capital improvement. And we were looking at that time, though, at a 66% solar array. By adding 106%, obviously you saw the cost of the project increase, but yet you're going to see to the very right-hand column at the bottom some of the immediate net savings that is estimated for solar savings per year. So just to go through these funding options relatively quickly, you'll see funding option 1, which is just a 2-year tight wrap for our CPCTC project. That's looking at 108,000 and a 1.58, a $1,548,000 total payments. And that just takes care of our career and technical education obligation for their $23.5 million building project, or our $23.5 million building project, not their. I should change that, and I apologize. It's for our students, all of the students that serve Cumberland Perry Career and Technical Center. Option 2 would present about $3 million of capital expenses and would be a 3-year tight wrap, and that would include our career and tech obligation as well. Option 3 is a $6.5 million with a 5-year tight wrap. Option 4A includes the Career and Technical Center, as well as allowing for 10.5 of capital expenses. The term would be for 7 years. The interest would be estimated at 2.494. Again, these are estimates because nothing has gone out, so there's some assumptions. And the total payments would be $14,619,125. Option 4B is taking that same number and just extending it down now into 12 years and looking at those payments. You'll see the interest as it extends out, though, almost doubles in terms of the expense for interest. Again, one thing I do want to be mindful of is there's always opportunities as interest rates increase to arbitrage money until it's used for funds. And there's always an opportunity to refinance as the market changes as well. So looking at projects and from our debt portfolio and structure is a pretty good thing for us financially to look at how we're going to manage our debt and our debt service.
Well, and the other thing, and if we need it, Chester, you could put this together, couldn't you, where, like, say we do option 3, and you would actually show us, because we would actually reach out to these companies and we'd actually get the interest rate, but you could show us, because I think there's still an opportunity for us to be close with as far as the interest that we'd be paying plus the interest that we'd be accruing. Yeah.
So this next slide is teeny tiny on the screen here, but it is going to be on the secondary part of your sheet. It's basically taking a look at our current debt comes off in 2025. So we have one more debt service payment. And you'll see that in each of the options. And you'll see, again, with each of the options presented in terms of capital funds and what those capital funds could be used for are really up to you as the board. I'll give some examples here in a moment. But you'll see the options with the existing debt and what the yearly debt service payment would be by fiscal year. And then on the far right-hand side, Mr. Holmes did a great job and also took that column out for some estimated solar savings per year as well, to see what some of those nexus would be between existing debt and estimated solar savings to take the two comparable.
Just to be clear, so the estimated solar savings is off of what we are currently paying or what you would have projected we were going to pay and what the savings would be with the new solar array?
It would be a combination of the sales of the SREC credits, and it would be the savings that we would be receiving from a reduction in what we would pay for electric costs.
Over what we pay now?
Over the projected of what we would pay.
So I guess just to bring it down to nuts and bolts, if we have I'm rounding up, a $2.5 million debt service, and we go with option 4A, which is about the same amount that we're paying now in debt service, right, but you're showing an estimated solar savings, we're not really taking $660,000 off of what we're paying right now in a debt service.
That's correct. There would, part of that 660,000 is your SREC income from selling the renewable energy credits, and then the difference would be savings from electric expense that you didn't pay.
Right.
Correct.
Is there a guarantee that there will be SREC savings?
No, there is not. There will be a well, there's no guarantees when it comes to SRECs. No. The only guarantee right now that we're told of is the Inflation Reduction Act, the 30% off, I shouldn't say 30% off, the 30% Treasury return on the cost of the total project that will be returned from the U.S. Treasury. Prior to 2022, that was not an option. We weren't eligible for that. That's what made a lot of investors come into play, because they were getting that Treasury, and they were able to take that and offset some of their risk associated with it, and they were able to get a higher return. We're now, because of the Reduction Act, able to take that savings back ourselves, because before it was only for entities that paid taxes.
But we don't know, we don't know if that was already included in the 8 million or not.
Correct, we don't, but I think fairly confident looking at that chart that it perhaps was not.
That doesn't affect these here, like
No.
these numbers are pointing.
Well, it does affect in how much we have to borrow.
I am.
No.
No, we're going to borrow it.
I appreciate that, and if the rest of the board, I am fine either way with my decision with the 30%. Because what I think is probably our best idea, knowing what else we need plus the solar, would be 4A, with the option that when we get that money back, that 30%, that we decide to, because we're going to confirm that there's not going to be any early penalty or anything like that, but we could decide as a board, it would give us more time to decide as a board if we wanted to use that for another project, or if we wanted to take that money and pay that right back immediately when we get it, which would more realistically turn it into something very close to option 3. But right now, we would call it 4A, knowing that we have that 30%, that almost $3 million, to pay that back early.
Are they going to allow us to pay that back early?
We would work on a resolution as part of the RFP to make sure that was available to us, as well as the ability to arbitrage that money, which is always good. When you look at the arbitrage right now, certainly the rates on the bottom are some estimated rates, and they're pretty solid rates. Of course, the interest rate is also higher right now too as well.
If I may offer my thoughts on that as well, I'm kind of like an option 4B, with the exception of the fact that the interest pretty much doubles. But what I like about that is it reduces our overall debt service enough that we are not going to have to further burden our taxpayers, and it should take down, right now we're living in a deficit. It will take like $1 million off of our deficit, plus approximate savings if we decide to go with the solar array. So I like that, and I like maintaining that debt service out far enough that if we do decide we're going to need to build or something, we could increase taxes or whatever it is to get the debt service high enough to put in a building. And it also causes us to go much further in the future before we have to have the same discussion over whether or not we want to get rid of debt service or not. So, and it also, it allows us to have the extra money to take on some of the things that the, what did we just have done? Feasibility study had taken on. So, except I don't like the extra $2 million interest, but I'm leaning in that direction if we do decide to do solar array at all.
Yeah, I have to agree with Mike in that aspect. I don't like B at all, but I would not want to do anything other than maybe even 3 or 2 if we're not doing solar. I don't see the reason to borrow all that money. And unlike Mike, I don't want to put our debt out into the future, because if we do have to build something, I don't want to still have 8 years to pay on something that we could have paid off last year.
that's a great point, but we actually do want to keep those in. We actually do want to keep our debt in if there's a future to consider building, because that is a not necessarily a bad thing, because it's a placeholder, and you can continue to manage that appropriately.
I understand that, but we're already, if you go option A, we're already out to 3031. I'm not talking about, I mean, personally, I'd rather have no debt, but I understand the philosophy behind it, because how are we going to make up $2.5 million we have to build a school? I get it. But I would rather not put some board member that comes on in the future to figure out how to pay for debt that I use 10 years from now. I'm just not voting for that.
What do you mean option A 3031? You can,
The table.
2031 is when the debt ends.
for
The problem with option B, in my opinion, Mike.
Oh, for 4A, I'm sorry, I was looking at A as one.
The problem for me is that 4B doesn't end until 35.
12 years is a long way to
That's
kick the
12
can down
years.
the road.
That's a long time from now for
No,
us
I-
not to need to do any major repairs.
No, but I hear you, but when you and I both got on this board, like, what, 14 years or something for you, like, we still had these buildings that we're paying for now. Like, some other board did that. Like, I don't think it's, I'm more worried that we have no debt service at all to a board that's gonna have to somehow miraculously raise taxes through the roof to be able to afford.
But let's just say that we extend it out, just if you do option 3,
Yep.
and we extend it out to 29, that's still, what, 5 years from now? And by then, we're going to have to fix something else. So we're going to have to borrow money again. So we're going to be doing what we've been doing for the last couple of years, is piecemealing new loans as we go forward. So I don't think that you have to worry about that. Like I said, my major concern is, why would we spend an extra $2 million in interest over the next 12 years when we can pay it off and do other projects in the 5 years from now?
Well, my concern on option 3 is that the debt service under option 3 is more than our existing debt service, which we're living in a deficit world as is. And the amount of money that we're gonna have for capital expenditures is $6,560,000. So if we go with the solar array, which is $8 million minus the $2 million we get back, we'll have very, very little, if anything, left to do any capital expenditures. And we're going to be increasing our deficit that we're living in now quite a bit, if I understand this
That's
correctly.
and you are correct. That's why I said that that's why I think we can't borrow money without knowing what we're doing with it. And I know that
Exactly.
I think that's what the administration is asking, but I can't vote for that. I want to know what we're going to spend the money on before I'm going to vote for it, because maybe you can convince me to go 10.5. At this point, I'm at the 6.5 range, but just because I don't,
Yes,
a lot of the stuff that was in that feasibility study I don't think is important.
No,
There's
I-
stuff
I-
in there that is important, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's not.
Yeah, I think I agree with you totally.
So, great segue. Here's some proposed possible uses of capital funds. So that was a really good segue in. First is the solar array at 8.4. That does not include the reimbursable refund from the U.S. Treasury, because the upfront cost is going to be greater, right? And then you can get that back and put that on there. The other is our obligation to career and technical education. The next is, we've been talking about middle school and high school bleachers for a long period of time, and I think we need to do those. I think it's time. That is an actual CoStar's quote. It's about $388,000 roughly, but plus or minus. Just to give you an example, just over the last couple of years, every year it's gone up, and it's going to continue to go up in price to repair those bleachers. The next is capital improvement items and capital improvement plan. That includes concrete repair work, water pipe repair work at our middle school, other items from our facilities plan. We can make a more delineated and concrete list upon your request to get more specific into that. But I'll be transparent. $1.8 million is a lot of money, but it does not go very far when it comes to repair, pipe repair, and other HVAC repair work that needs to be done.
Does that,
So when you say 12, you're actually talking about 10.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted, that's what I was adding up in my head, but I wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about the 2 billion coming back.
Yep, yep.
And if I may, like, something that I think gets missed when I see these slides are things that I think need to happen that will make a big impact that don't cost as much. Like some of the cosmetic improvements with our like music program and some of these closets and spaces that are filled with junk that just need cleaned out and reorganized. I don't think all that's gonna cost a lot of money, but I don't see where it's on anyone's list. And I really think that's gonna trump some of this other stuff that will make a huge difference. And I'm just talking about the high school. I'm sure there are similar areas in other buildings. It's gonna make a big difference to the lives of the kids and the adults that work in this building that I just feel like we just keep pushing it aside because it's not a huge pipe that's gonna leak. But I think I would like us to get that on a list somewhere because I think it's an important priority. And I don't think it's gonna be exorbitant cost-wise. Maybe that's why it doesn't, maybe that's why it seems like it's not all that important.
So I have a question. The capital, I'm sorry, were you going to respond to him?
Oh, I was going to say, it absolutely is important. Relooking at spaces. I think a good example of that was here at the high school with Mr. Moore taking a space that really was a collection of stuff, exactly what you said, that hasn't been unfortunately used, and it became a kind of a closet per se. And now it's a drafting and design lab for our students to be able to use that. And it was a perfect place in there. And there's more that needs to occur in that regard, absolutely.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we are so understaffed, and because either we can't hire people or we have to be, that we're gonna have to hire someone with a specific goal and vision and purpose in mind, because teachers or whoever can't take their nights and weekends to come in and redo closets so there's a creative teaching space. You know what I mean? I think it's something we should invest in, making sure that it gets done for our staff and our kids.
I have a question. The capital improvement capital items, are they ones that were already on our normal 5-year facilities plan, or are they the things that were identified during the feasibility study?
Both. The feasibility studies report drove some of these areas that are in that 4-year capital and facilities plan that we shared with you and that you have as well with some of the pictures. Yes.
And in terms of the question that Phil had regarding the amount of this loan, it is a $12 million loan because you've got $10 million for the solar array and the capital improvements and the whatever million dollars for the CPC-TC, which is all in the total 12.
Yes, and he's talking about I believe the U.S. Treasury return.
No,
But
but he thought it was, I think, Phil, you
No, I
thought.
it was only a $10 million loan.
No, it's a $12 million loan.
No, it's 12, sorry.
Because you don't have CPC-TC up there. Well, you do, actually. You have 8.4 plus 1.4 plus the
So
8 plus
my
1.8.
thought is,
Did I not add right?
no, my thought is that you don't need to borrow 12, you can borrow 10, because you're not going to get into some of these other projects until you get the money back. Because you can file for that right away and have it as soon as the system is installed.
So you as a board can absolutely direct where and what you want the borrowing capacity to be. So really at this point, the next step, in my opinion, is to feel comfortable with a number. And if you feel comfortable with a number, then we would take that number and bring in our finance company, PFM, to come in and to talk about the next steps, which I believe would be a resolution. From that resolution, if I recall, then we go out to RFP to try to get some competitive numbers from banks.
And we can't really, I believe, be comfortable with a number until we're comfortable with what we're going to use that money for.
Agree.
So
Okay,
at $10
but-
million, what my thought would be a solar array, our CPC-TC construction obligation, and taking care of our obligation to high school and middle school bleachers. That will put you at $10 million.
And I think part of that will be when we hear from them tomorrow.
When we hear, just about that, I mean, because,
It troubled me, and I'm going to say it bothers me they came here for this presentation, and, oh, by the way, there might be $22,500,000 we forgot. You know, that's a big deal. you know, and so that, we should find out about that.
But it happens, and we're going to find out about it tomorrow, but I feel like, I get it that we only talked about this last month, but I think that John has been very clear to us that this is what he wants to spend the money on. And I think the more we keep saying, well, we don't know what we're going to spend the money on, this is what we want to spend the money on. Now, if someone doesn't want to spend the money on one of those things, then say, I don't want to spend the money on one of those things so that we can move forward. But don't say, I don't know what we're going to spend the money on, because that's what we're going to spend the money on.
I'm
That's
not
what these
sure that
numbers
I
are.
want to spend the money on a solar array. I just said that.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's different, but that's, do you see what I'm saying? I'm not, it wasn't a gear towards you, it wasn't a gear towards anyone. It was, this is what we're gonna borrow the money for. If we don't want one of those items, then don't borrow the money. Now, is the one thing that you're hauled up with at 30%?
Oh, no, it's the whole, like you said, we just started talking seriously about it last month. I have to do more homework on it. It's a lot of money.
And I think,
But we need to give CPCT their money. So we can't sit on this for months and months and months and months.
No, we have till next summer.
yeah, we've got time with CPCTC.
Oh, I thought that
And
had to be
technically,
soon.
we have the money.
I know.
We shouldn't spend it, but we do have it.
Our first obligation to career and technical education will be July of 2024.
Okay.
One
Then that
thing we
makes me
wanted
feel a little
to
better.
just be aware of is the reason it does feel fast. And again, Mr. Holmes and I talk about this all the time. We do not want to move at an express lane pace when there's not a comfort factor. I understand that completely. What we're trying to do is look ahead at the future, but also a little bit of racing the clock, respectfully. And when I say racing the clock, it's about a 14-month construction period for solar array. That's on a good day. And that's saying that no permits will be held up, that the interconnectability between PPL, which sometimes gets held up a lot, almost to the point of a year, becomes difficult. We want to make sure that we're not entering into another electrical agreement at a higher rate, that we can make sure that we are presenting all options to you and get a return on any investment as quick as possible for the district. But again, I want to, again, respect and be mindful, because I'm not sitting here in this seat saying that $12 million, I should just wink my eye and be happy. There's not a question about that at all. It's a major investment. We want to go slow to go fast, but at the same point, understanding that there is this other factor out there that we want to be mindful of.
Okay, so the time frame to get money is 2 months. 3 to 4, okay? But I don't think that you can start that process until, which I think we probably have to bid the solar systems, correct?
That
I
we will
would-
research.
Personally, I would
believe
want to
so.
bid them, and I think we should start that. If as a board we're going to decide that we're going to do it, then we should have bids starting tomorrow. And just bid it out. We don't have to go through with them. If we go through the bidding process, because his 8.4, another company might be 12, another company might be 10, and there's probably reasonings behind it. And another company might come in at 6.
Can I ask another question? Like, and I know this is all unknown. Like, he did a lot of, if this assumes, or it's anyone's best guess, which I get that, and I appreciate his integrity in saying that. Could somebody maybe call around to like Greenwood or Cumberland Valley or some of these other schools that have these solar arrays and get a feel for, hey, when the company told you this is what we thought you would make, how did they do for you? I mean, I'm just curious, because they're salesmen. You know, I'm just curious. Are they coming out? Where are they coming out on some of these predictions? Because that's what they do for a business.
So, Mike,
Does that make sense?
after they get to the next stage and start bidding, they actually can tell you how much each solar panel is going to produce each day because of the normal sunlight over the last 5 years. So they can, this stuff that they're doing now, like you said, this is a salesman just throwing stuff at you. Our number could come back $1 million different, plus or minus, just because they come out, their project manager comes out and goes, well, you can't do that. That's 500 more feet of.
I need to educate myself, because this is a live thing.
With the savings was based off of the projected cost of the electricity. And that's no different than when we had the feasibility study and they had the PDE's projected enrollment numbers, and we all thought they were crazy and off, because there's no true formula to tell what that's going to be.
And
So,
here's-
Mike, you know that the guy that spoke was the superintendent of Midwestern, right?
But he works for the company.
Does now.
Right, yeah.
But he didn't when they purchased that, he didn't work for them.
I know.
So that's based on what, I mean, I see what you're saying, that he's a salesperson now, but they have the reason I'm bringing it back up to you is I like Greenwood and I like their little array, but it's like 6 of them. It's not what Midwest has. It's not what we would have.
I would disagree.
Something to consider is Susquenita is along the river, so what, the fog doesn't sometimes go off until around 10 a.m.? So it might be less sunshine than they're planning. I don't know if they're taking that into effect or not, but it'd be the same as being a cloudy day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point that they'll have to look at the size and the atmospheric weather conditions.
I totally get when you're saying you got to go slow to go fast, fast to go slow. I mean, I left here after the last meeting thinking that the solar array was going to be 5 million. Now it's at 8.4. Like, and I get it's a different thing. We're looking at 106%, but I feel like I'm struggling with going with, yeah, let's go all in now. This looks great, on a lot of numbers that we don't know. And I know we can say, yeah, the feasibility study talked about PDE's numbers. At least they had them built from a long time. This increase in electricity skyrocketed in the last 3 years, and these solar arrays have only gone in the last 3 years. All of these projects that he presented to us today, he doesn't have data. They don't have enough data on them yet.
But the payback, let's just talk payback. The payback now that we have that 2.4, as long as that comes back, that wasn't in the original number, is now 7 years. Their numbers were super conservative for 7 years, in my opinion. So there's almost no way we're not going to hit those. So the system will be paid off 7 years from now.
I think at this point, we should wait for them to get back to us, confirm that the 2.4 was not included, and I think in the interest of time, we should probably just move along to the next item.
Yeah, just not to belabor it, but just two things. I did check with some school districts that have had arrays from this company, sent them a plethora of questions, and they were really quick and great to get back. It does check out. A couple of the hiccups were PP&L. It was the connection. It was being able to connect from PP&L to the system, and a couple hiccups with parts. The parts didn't come in for them. There was a higher demand for the panels, and not enough. Higher demand, not enough supply. So they were delayed because of that. But the return on it seemed to be what they were projecting. To the point where a couple are looking to expand their projects a little bit.
Oh, can you ask him one more question tomorrow?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's in that number. Can you ask him in that 8.4 if there is transformers? Because in the last 6 months, PP&L has pretty much, if you get solar installed at your house, you have to replace the transformer at your house. Because they say they can't handle them anymore because the state gave them this loophole.
Oh, to see if there's
So
transformer
we
costs.
could have to replace all the transformers around the district. And I don't know how, these are bigger ones, so I don't know what they cost, but one at your house costs somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Make sure he has something, make sure he thought that into that number.
Yep.
4 million is out the door price. So it's land, a site workup, like site improvement, whatever needs to be done.
It is, and that's an estimation, because again, we would have to go out to RFP, where there'd be a lot of different factors put into place. But yes, that is site development, permitting, as is built, yep.
But that's presuming we're using them where he's saying.
Absolutely.
Because again, it's like I'm.
Absolutely.
Is there a way to look at a scale of this? Like, do we have to go to 106? Can we take out the panels that are around the elementary school in the front of it and not put those in at all? And what kind of what kind of
Sure, absolutely. You could scale it back to whatever dimensions you wanted to as a board. We went to 106% because we wanted to not only get 100% off for cost savings and reduction, but we also wanted to future-proof, knowing full well that expenses and future energy, when we talk 40 years, could also expand in terms of usage. Plus, there's potential to give back, to sell back, to net meter back.
Sure, and some of the other reasons for the 106% are that when you install a solar panel, it immediately starts to become less and less effective as every day passes, correct? So you have that. And then you also have the potential for us to increase our energy usage. So between those two, we wanted to try to capture 100% for as long as we could. Does that make sense? So if we increase our energy consumption, that 106 is not 106 anymore. If they become less and less effective, productive, then that lessens that as well.
when do you have to replace them?
4 years.
The panel itself, 40 years.
They're saying is going to go 40 years, and we know that
There's
because
a 30-year warranty.
they've been out there 40 years. Sorry.
There's a 30-year warranty, but there is also monitors, so they'll be able to monitor how much is being collected by panels to be able to determine if one of the panels is defective or not, to be able to replace while it's under warranty.
Yeah, so I would imagine on a system like this, Scott can get up in the morning and get on his iPad and see that yesterday, for some reason, panel 45 and 93 didn't produce much, and he can watch them and then call the company because those aren't producing.
But we have data.
I would say
So in an effort just to kind of move on to the next topic, which is calendar for the 24-25 school year. I know, great segue, right? Yay! What would you like collectively the next steps to be? I know we want to get that information back for him from Greenworks Energy and SRE as to that 30%, was that included in that spreadsheet? He'll send that immediately. We also want to ask if there's transformers that are associated, like a transformer cost that's occurred there. Is there anybody else you want to hear from or you want to do next?
No, the only thing that maybe I would like to see to help us is if you can talk to, and I cannot think of any of their names. I can't think of our contact's name, and I can't think of the name of the company that we get our loans from.
That would be PFM?
Yes.
Okay.
He usually will put together kind of like a forecast, like of what the next couple of months, what the next year, what the next time frame is going to look like. Here's where interest is, and this is how high it's going to go up. This is what it's going to go. And we want kind of an estimate. I can't remember if we get it from him or we just get it from our bank as well, Chester. But like interest rates, as well as like if we get, say, the $10 million and we get it at X interest rate, but we can make X 0.5 interest rate in, with the interest in the bank. So we're going to make this much money on it while we're putting the solar panels together, something like that. I think he will, without us having to make a commitment to purchase. I think he will give us some kind of forecast. Maybe that will help us of like, if we feel like we need to make a decision faster, if we feel, I get that our energy rate is going to go up next December. I was thinking that we didn't have very much time to give the money to CPT.
Our Career and Technical Center.
But, so if we kind of have time for both of them, that makes me feel better, except for the time that it's going to take to do all this, because just the permits, I'm sure is going to take months. But I think that might be helpful to everyone if we can get that forecast.
I really hate to even say it because I want to move on, but somebody should do a Google Earth measurement from here to the property Phil was speaking about. And if that is within 2 direct miles, then you should get back to the company and have them mock up
Well, he said
what the
just a
virtual
circle.
meeting.
He said just to circle the land, and he would figure it out for us.
Well, we can do that too. Get it to them, whoever's going to do the measurement. And if it doesn't apply, yeah, and if it's not within 2 miles, then don't even bother with the virtual metering and just move on.
And,
Why-
no, I don't. And do we need to figure out the slope of this property behind the school, if that's an even possible building
It's more
site?
than what he said.
It's more than 10%.
Yeah.
Some points, yes.
Yes, it kind of there's a ledge there.
What about the property that's next to the acre? So when they put that array on, that wasn't on the whole 10 acres, was it? So why did they choose to do the property closest to the baseball fields and not one down further? Why did you do that?
Didn't do the one close.
But why? Did you mind me asking? I mean,
Yeah, I wanted to try to maintain that as a practice field in the future.
but wouldn't it make sense that, I understand that it's closer, but wouldn't it make sense?
The one he's picking is the furthest.
Oh, it is the farthest away. Okay. I thought it was the one right next to the baseball field. Okay, okay. All right, that's what I was going to ask, why we didn't, yeah.
This field for what sport?
Multi-purpose, anything.
Because I'm just thinking.
Green space.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if that's the case, then they could perhaps use the current practice field for a solar array.
Yep, absolutely. It's an option.
And to move on, I actually love this calendar.
I-
I have no changes.
So just to
Oh, you have a comment about the calendar?
summarize, because there was a lot of information. I just need to summarize to know what our charge is in terms of getting back information for you. Number one, we want to get back, and he's going to get back to us, Doug will, about that 30% U.S. Treasury credit if it's factored into the formula. Number two, we'll look at transformers and if there's additional cost of that. Then we will look and see if there's any projects that have extended, since solar's been around a while, that have lasted the test of time that he's aware of and what the degradation of those were at this point. We know, like anything else, there's improvements in technology. We're going to Google Earth measurement, and someone, perhaps after the meeting, is going to give me a little better of the location, address of that property. I know where it is, but I don't necessarily know the address per se. Then we're going to look at the possibility of our existing property that we have and look at slope and see if there's any usage there, as well as other sites on district to see what that would look like to get back with you. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Before,
All right.
before we move on to the calendar, Chester, do you have the mailing labels for me tonight? Okay, I'll pick them up from you tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
So calendar is just a first kind of review, and again, I want to thank Mrs. Balspa for all of her work on the calendar. The calendar is there. Please take a moment when you get a chance. It's printed in color here. I'm just going to go over some brief aspects of it. So proposed-wise, start of school would be August 21st of 2024. We would have our new professional induction series around August 7th, August 8th, and August 12th. We would look at teacher professional learning days, our opening days, beginning August 14th, 15th, 16th, and the 19th. Labor Day, we would look at Labor Day being August 30th, would be an Act 80 day, professional learning day for us, and our students would be off, and we would come back. That Monday would be Labor Day. Students would be off, staff would be off, buildings would be closed, and offices would be closed on September the 2nd. Winter and spring breaks, November break would be November 27th proposed to December 2nd, with school resuming on December the 3rd. Winter break would be December 20th, would be a 2-hour early dismissal for our students, and December 23rd, all the way till January the 1st of 2025. So a big break because of the way it falls this year, with school returning on January 2nd proposed. Spring break would be April the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, and 21st, with school resuming on April 22nd. Snow makeup days would be the 17th and 21st. Graduation and end of school. I can't believe we're talking about this already. Graduation, end of school. At graduation would be May 29th, 2025, proposed at the Blackhawk Stadium, with our weather alternative being in the gym. Last student day being May 29th, 2025, which would be a half student day. Last teacher day would be May 30th, with teacher professional learning day, and the last day for staff and teachers. So the next steps for me with this calendar would be to gain feedback from you as you take a look at it, review it, have questions on it. We'd love to have those, and we can continue to work on that as we progress. I'll review the student days and teacher staff days. Again, we want to make sure we're adding into the contractual 190 and 180 for students. We want to seek feedback from our principals, because this is the first time they saw this, and we want to seek feedback from our association as well, and to see what our membership and our teachers and our staff feedback on. And then I will review calendars with our Perry County schools, as I have a meeting tomorrow following a meeting at the IU with the regional superintendents, the Perry County superintendents. We're going to meet and we'll talk calendar. Not that everything has to be aligned, but it is always nice, especially when we begin more and more to share programs, resources, and students. And we'll also talk with Cumberland Perry Career and Tech Center, because they'll be asking for proposed calendars relatively soon, too.
So I have a couple comments. One,
Yeah.
when you list Act 80 days, are those listed as Act 80 days because you're going to be applying to the state for those to be counted as school days?
Yes, sir.
But 2 of those Act 80 days are half days?
Yes, sir.
So if the students are coming to the school half day anyway, isn't that counted as a full day?
So the activities in the afternoon still qualify for an Act 80 day.
Right.
Yes, yes, to the first part, yes. The second part, because the activity is parent-teacher conferences, it qualifies under Act 80.
But
so we will use that.
But do we get
credit for a full day?
What we would if it was a half day anyway, right?
Correct.
I'm just thinking, I don't know what the benefit for those two half days applying for an Act 80 day would be. If you only are allowed 4, and so the other 2 are full days, would it maybe make sense to not apply to the state for those 2 half days in case we end up in a situation where we need those Act 80 days?
That's a really great point, and we could absolutely do that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, really great point. In the event that something would occur.
Then we could do a curriculum day. And
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
My other thought, I've just a comment. I don't know that we need to have a early dismissal.
On the 20th?
On the 20th.
Yeah.
And I have one other comment. I know this is not going to go over well, but it's just my feelings. I've not talked to anyone in any school district anywhere that has felt that flexible instructional days were good use of time instructionally. Personally, I would rather us use our built-in snow days first, and then if we run out of snow days, use the flexible instruction days so that we don't have to, extend the school year. I would not want to use those as a first resort, because there's nothing better than the kids coming into school and meeting with their teachers face to face. And we have a snow day, we have snow day makeup days built in. I would prefer the flexible instruction days to be used after the 3 snow days. I'm sure that's not going to go over well, but it makes the best instructional sense to be.
I certainly understand that from an instructional point of view, and I will not disagree with some of the best experiences are with our students and with their peers.
I mean, no matter how hard we try, and I'm not talking Susquenita, I'm talking any district, it's really, really difficult effectively using those flexible instruction days. It just doesn't mean the same as when those students are face to face with their teachers. And I guess the only other point I would like to make is Easter is really late. It leaves for a really long March with very few days put in there at all. I wish there was a way we could arrange somehow to have some time off there in March, especially if we need to use that snow makeup day on March 28th. That's a long, long time, especially after February. February is the hardest day of the year, the hardest month of the year. So that's my other observation.
March can be a really.
And thank you for getting this out to us so early.
As I'm going to make a comment because Mike knows I'm going to make a comment. As someone that graduated from this school in '94, when I was just joking with John Fry that we had snow, and I think we had flooding, and we had a teacher strike. So they did not finish school until the end of June. Now, luckily, we got state forgiveness and the seniors could graduate on time because of colleges and military commitments and everything. But they literally went until at least the 28th of June because they had to make up so many days. So I will always be in favor. I think that flexible instruction is the best idea there has ever been. We have not had to use that many of them, fortunately. It's not like we are in a situation, I would never want to use like multiple ones in a row. I think that it's nice and it gives the administration and it gives the families and it gives everyone the knowledge, it allows us to give them the night before. I think flexible instruction days have allowed us to give much more notice because we know we can do it as a flexible instruction day. And it prevents things like losing days in March and backing them up. Because I'd be willing to bet, as hard as that may be that one day a month when we get snow and we have to do a flexible instruction day, it's better than having to teach until the end of June when those students know they should be on summer break and they are in school. And then we run into, I think that we have air and everything in all the schools, but you see schools run into issues with, just the electricity costs and everything that it would cost us to have the school open that much longer. So because of that past experience, I think that I would be willing to do a mix like we did this year. This year you did a nice mix. You did like 2 flexible spending days. In between there was a snow day. All of a sudden people like reminisce about snow days and that's fine. But I think that that's worse when students have to miss their breaks and everything because of snow days.
If we really want to honor a good snow, so our students and the adults can go out and play in it. And we haven't had that, and honestly, there's like a couple things I struggle. That's always a tough one, right? No one ever calls and says, hey, that was a really great call, thanks, and you look at the weather and you're like, oh, that one's tough. Thankfully, we have a great county and we work together, but there's some variables. We all there's a lot of atmospheric or weather differences between us, Greenwood, Newport, and West Perry. There's a lot of variables there. So weather, being a prognosticator certainly is a difficult thing. We try to do our best, but when in doubt, we will try to err on the side of caution and safety.
I just have a question about the PSSA testing. So for ELA, you have it listed as the 21st through the 25th, but the 21st of April is actually a no school day.
Correct.
So is that meant?
It's a window.
Okay.
Yep, it's just a window for testing. Testing usually 2 days for that particular subject with 1 day of makeups. So that window gives us a flexibility of window, yeah.
I'm just curious.
That window is set by the state.
Okay. So, perfect.
This may not be popular, but I'll just throw it out there. I know because of the way Christmas falls, we have the extra days during the winter break. Your Easter break is shortened. Like Mike pointed out, you really don't have any break at all, except for the 1 day in March, which is a snow makeup day, so you could lose that. Is there this big fear of going into like June 2nd and 3rd? You know what I mean? Like I said, historically, before a couple years ago, we always finished the first week of June.
I agree with you. I think we could extend the school, I'm sorry, just totally do it up.
No, I'm just done.
Extend it to the first week of June and build more time off during the school year.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be a bad thing. May is just crazy busy anyway.
Yeah.
That's where I would probably leverage our students to get some feedback, because I think right around, and this is just talking to my own kids, of course, they say all kinds of things, but typically after Memorial Day, it's tough. It's tough.
I think
but again,
if it was 2 days.
But again, we can certainly take a look at that.
It seems like, I'm not saying all schools, but a lot of schools finish that first week of June, and so,
Are
you
you
know.
saying utilize, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to, like, use some days in March then, and then add a couple? Is that what you're?
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, or give yourself more time around Easter. Your Easter break is shorter this year than it was than the current year because of the days that you had to make up because of Christmas. I mean, I've never been a fan of coming back to school on January 2nd. I realize that if you don't come back January 1st and you come back January 2nd, then you only have the 3rd, which is one day. So I would probably be in favor of giving yourself those days off. But if I could push those days, if I only had 2 days to work with, I'd probably bring them around Easter or March even, or somewhere to give you that break in between. I understand like the whole idea of after Labor Day, yeah, but I mean, we just, even work-wise, you know, those, because a lot of these kids, lifeguard or whatever, the pool wasn't even open in at least where my kids work, because the schools down there didn't get out until the 7th of June.
I do think, and maybe Dr. Fox can check into this. I'm pretty sure last year we were out like an entire week before a lot of the other schools in the area.
Well, then-
And if to do that, we need to cram so much into a school year, I would much rather go further into the first week of June and be consistent with other schools and give our families time to breathe throughout the school year.
Then I'd rather start the next week in August. That's what we used to do.
You mean starting on the 26th?
No, well, what we used to do is like, we would start maybe
The 26th, like
like the
Yeah.
26th, but and then we would ramp it down.
and we would be done around the 4th and 5th of June.
But,
normally.
we would want to ramp that day though, like the 26th should be a half day, the 29th should be a half day, the 30th should be off.
My thought would be to keep this start. I like how it's staggered, and I think some feedback from this year, and we'll get lessons learned as we keep going, was we want to tier some of the start, a gradual increase in. I think that was welcome from some feedback. And again, I'll collect some feedback here from our administrators. But I like, you know, when we talk about breaking up that month of March, there's some work we could do there and then see what that would look like. Because that's a tricky month, for sure. Try to build in some days, you know, throughout it. Yeah, to see what we can do. What's that?
Well, and everybody's focused on March here, but it literally shows there's 20 student days in March. There's other months where there's more student days. So, I mean, it's not, but it's just because the 1st and 2nd fall on a Saturday, Sunday, there's, you know, a 31-day month, but there's really only 20 student days. It's not like there's 22 student days in October, and, you know. And there's a day off included in there.
So let me, go ahead.
Just real quick. So my daughter, and I'm just thinking this to try and make a compromise between these FID and these snow days. So last year, you might not remember this, but someone that I talk to very frequently reminds me of it all the time, that the day that we had a snow day last year was actually a half day. And the makeup day was not a half day. It was a full day. And they wanted to know why you were so mean, and you would make us do the makeup day as a full day when it was actually a half day. So what I'm wondering, well, that's who I was talking about. No, it's not. So what I was wondering is, so let's say that we have this day, April 17th, and we have a snow day in February, that we have as a snow day. It's actually, we get feet of snow, everyone agrees it should be a snow day, not an FID day, it's a snow day. Is there some rule that says that the 17th can't be a half day? Like, it's a snow day, but we're only gonna, it's a makeup day, but it's only gonna be a half day. And we put it on the calendar that way now, so it's not like teachers scrambling about a 2 or 3 hour delay. It's not a surprise, but that way we kind of are not losing our days that are on the schedule. We're not losing Easter break, but we're not also losing an actual snow day instead of an FID day. Just a thought.
No, my only comment, maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy, but like, oh yeah, you're the one who's 60 today. I worry about not just the mathematics of making this work, but I worry about actual instructional time. And when we take these Act 80 days, they're counted as student days, but we're not in school. So there's 2 days that count as student days, the kids aren't in school. Then we have these FID days. And for motivated students who have parents who can work with them and whatever, those are great days. But for those who have students who have learning disabilities and difficulties and their parents aren't able to work with them, these days are hell. They just are. And so we lose, I think those are loss of instructional time as well. So if we took five FID days, we take 2 Act 80 days, and then, I don't mean this disrespectfully at all, and then we make up days with half days, those are wasted instructional days often as well. I just worry. I'd rather go longer into the summer and we get more instructional time. We're losing the instructional time.
Instructional time is valuable, no question.
And it's just. What's
And-
that?
I still think that, yeah, there's.
It isn't happening.
Perhaps.
And maybe this is where we reach out to the teachers or whoever, because this is the first time that we're talking about the calendar. If they knew from day one that this was gonna be a half day, if we had snow, what would the half day look like, and how much would that affect their teaching? And what is that compared to a kid seeing on the calendar, April 17th is off, and then now they're going to school that day? How much education gets done that day versus if it was a half day? Which one is the worst? Because the other way is we don't use any Act 80 days and we use the FID days.
Yeah, I think there's some good discussions. I think just for the sake of time, this was kind of our first blush across the calendar. Let me go to work on some of the feedback and collect some feedback. Let me collect some feedback from my colleagues as well, and make some of those just initial adjustments here, and to see what we can take a look at. This was our first gander at it here in October, and no worries, we'll be back at it here in November's caucus. I would absolutely love that.
Gets rid of all the problems. No.
All right, everybody, is there, let me take a look, see if there's any public comment at this time. Any public comment for any of you guests here? You're incredible for staying the whole time. And let me see if there's any public comment electronically from guests that are listening.
There's not. Technology says no.
Thank you. At this time, there is none. I will see everybody next Tuesday.